Can't believe he's done it. The conference room Clash champion, Pat Chowder, being lifted into the air by a cow with human teeth.
Oh my gosh, that's the game.
What a game.
And Zero Skater is our new champ.
Oh my goodness. He was not expecting to survive that attack.
And that is it. Chad is the winner of Summer of Legends. Hello and welcome everybody to the finals weekend for the unmatched Summer of Legends 2024 Legends Division Finals. So I am super excited. My name is John Lavelle, also known as Zero Skater 12, and I am joined with my wonderful cast of commentary crew here, starting off with Angel. How you doing, Angel?
I'm doing great. I'm super excited. We are here again, once again, for the weekend, the most important weekend of everyone's year.
That's right. Well said. And then, of course, everybody knows Zach, Darkblade113. How you doing, Zach?
Doing well. Always love doing commentary for Unmatched, so looking forward to probably the most exciting time for any of these tournaments, and that's finals weekend.
Yes, everybody loves finals weekend. What was that?
Second most exciting. Team League is number one.
Of course.
Oh,
you know what? How can I forget? How can I forget?
Team League forever.
That's right. Well,
we just assume, you know.
Yep. Everybody loves Team League. But here we are at the top of the competition. Now, this time we did things a little bit different. So to talk a little bit about the path that these players had to go through, we split it up into two divisions this time. So we have the Challengers division and we have the Legends division. So the Challengers division was meant to be more of a stepping stone into competitive Unmatched, where newer players had a chance to prove themselves and qualify for the Legends division, as well as win some cool prizes like foils and whatnot. And that concluded last weekend, so big congratulations to Kenny for winning the Grand Finals, which was streamed over on Darkblade's channel, actually. So if you guys missed that one, go check it out. The VOD should still be there. But there were some great games, and those players really proved themselves to be new up-and-coming talent, which is really awesome to see. And here in the Legends division, we had players who have already proven themselves in one way or another. So either they pre-qualified for the Legends division by making the top 64 in the previous major tournament, Winter of Champions, earlier this year. So those 64 players got an invite to return, and then the other 64 came from qualifiers that we ran over the last few months. There was 3 qualifiers, I believe, and we had the top 20 or so people from each of the qualifiers get an invite into the Legends division. So they had to go through sort of a mini bracket in order to even qualify and prove their worth. And both of the players we have here today, we have Kjet versus NinjaSegun, and they both were pre-qualified from making top 64 in the previous Winter of Champions event. So they've proven themselves time and time again, and we're going to see them face off against each other here. Now, in the Legends division, we started off with a number of groups, and you had to win, I believe it was 2 out of 3 of your group matches to qualify into the bracket, which goes to single elimination, and that was the top 64. So from there, we've had a number of rounds over the weeks, and we've limited down to the top 4 here. So very exciting, and these players have gone through a lot to get to where they are. Now, with that being said, do either of you guys have any extra info on these players or any predictions maybe on who you think's going to win?
Well, as we know, Kjet is the last American in the tournament, so I gotta put my money down on him to bring it home. But honestly, at this point, seeing how all of the players here have played both in this tourney as well as previous events, a lot of them are no stranger to these tournaments. I honestly don't think that there's an easy prediction for who's going to get there. Honestly think that it's going to come down to who ends up getting the upper hand in the draft, because I think since everyone's on such an even playing field as far as the actual skill, play skill, It's really going to come down to, can one of the players win the draft and get a bit of an edge there, because it's those types of differences that are going to be, making it between who can edge out the win and who doesn't quite get there. I do think it's actually that close. So I'll be very interested to see once we have the fighter lineups, kind of what each player's strategy is, because I do think that those little differences are going to be what we really see make the difference here in who gets there.
Yeah, I do agree with that. Like you mentioned, they're on such an even playing field in terms of skill because these players are the best of the best. And so, with that being said, you got to just sneak out any little edge you can get, and the draft can make a huge difference. Angel, do you want to give us a little bit of a rundown for the viewers on how the draft works?
Yeah, of course. So Banquest is a format that was introduced, I believe, last summer of Legends, and it is very similar to an old format that we had. I believe it was called Conquest. Basically, each player, they're going to determine a leader or follower, and after they determine a leader or follower, they're going to take turns banning one character in the roster each until there's a total of 6 bans, 3 each per player. Afterward, the leader will pick 1 fighter that they will be drafting, and the follower will follow up with 2, and then it'll go back to the leader, picking 2, then the follower will pick their last 2, they have 4, and the leader will pick one last one, wrapping it up, and both players have 4. Afterward, both players will simultaneously ban one of the 4 of the opponent's fighters, and after those are revealed, they swap, and they have to self-ban one of their own fighters, leaving each player with 2 fighters each. It's a simple best of 3 in this case. It might be best of 5 for semis.
Best of 3 for semis, and we're going to do best of 5 tomorrow for grands.
Best of 5 for grands. So best of 3 for semis, which means that they're left with 2 fighters, and the first one to win with both of their fighters wins the set.
Yep. So, seems simple, right? We'll see how
Yep.
it goes. Now, you mentioned how it works. Now, do you guys have any predictions on what fighters we might be seeing banned in the pre-bans here? You mentioned 6 fighters. So what would you say the 6 fighters are going to be banned are?
I think both of these players are skilled enough to respect and understand to not... At this point in the tournament, I don't think it's worth gambling any of the big 3. So I would be under the assumption, the safe assumption, that at least 1 or 2 of them will probably be banned.
Yeah,
before
I would
draft.
agree with that. Zach, do you think that there's going to be any targeted bans? Because as we all know, there's a wonderful website called UM League, and that is the website that hosts all of these major events. So big shout out to Frank for his wonderful work in the community with that website, because that really runs everything and keeps this all going. It's an excellent resource. It has fighter stats on there. You can organize tournaments on there, and you can look up player stats and all this cool stuff. And so players have access to looking up their opponent, doing a little bit of research and finding out maybe what their comfort picks might be and which fighters they tend to play the most and have the most success with, since all the stats are on there. So with that liberty to be able to go research your opponent, Zach, do you think there's going to be any targeted bans specific to their opponents?
Yeah, I mean, I think that when you get to this stage, you're looking at that type of stuff a lot more, especially when you're up against established players. I mean, I wouldn't even be surprised if these players not only have the UML stats, but also, have probably gone against each other at least several times throughout the various competitions. And so there's definitely a known quantity with more established players like that. And so one that I would like to call out in particular that we've seen him have a lot of success with in the past is Kjet and InGen. So I would imagine that we're going to see that somewhere, whether it's banned or in. But I would not be surprised if that could potentially be a pre-ban. It's not usually one that you'd look at pre-banning, just because you do need to pick your spots, and there are weaknesses as far as matchup spread goes. But at the same time, when you've got a player as good as Kjet and with a fighter that they're really good with, that can be quite strong in the right circumstances, you do want to be careful of that. So that's one that that just off the bat I would look at, in addition to things like the normal big three, quote unquote, which at this point is Sherlock, Elektra, Doctor Strange, and other strong things that you see as well, like Bigfoot and Medusa and all those usual suspects, I suppose. So
Yeah, I love that you point out the Muldoon because I know firsthand how good Kjet is with Muldoon. He beat me in the Cobble and Frogs 2024 tournament in Paris earlier this summer that was actually streamed on your channel, Zach. That was a ton of fun. We had some cool games, but yeah, the Muldoon was very tough to beat. So he definitely knows what he's doing, and you don't want to underestimate a good Muldoon because looking back to the very first tournament that we ever had here, Prospero versus Bug Hunter, and Prospero really showed the power of Muldoon. He was kind of the pioneer back in those days. It's crazy to think way back when, but he found out the strengths of Muldoon, before anyone else did, and realized that Muldoon's pretty dang good against Bigfoot. And back in those days, Bigfoot was nearly unstoppable. So yeah, InGen is quite the fighter. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see that one in Kjet's picks. I also know that Kjet is very good with Jill Trent. That's kind of one of his secret mains. And I believe he plays a lot of She-Hulk. And I think we all share some opinions on She-Hulk. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see. I think we'll see She-Hulk pre-banned. Actually, I wouldn't be surprised.
She is pretty common in that slot, yeah.
Yeah, just because she can be pretty oppressive into a lot of the cast. But yeah, as far as pick predictions go, I think Kjet's looking at She-Hulk, Muldoon, Jill Trent, and we've actually seen him have a decent amount of success, I believe, with Moon Knight. So I wouldn't be surprised on that one either. Are there any other particular picks you would expect? I honestly don't know. On the other side, for Ninja, I don't really know his preferences or his comfort picks. So do you guys have any insight on that?
We could try to pull up his player stats here, but go ahead, Zach, while I do.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I know that Kjet has done it a decent amount too, but I don't know to the same degree. But I know that Ninja has played a lot in ladders and whatnot, so it's harder to look at stats and just be like, oh yeah, this is for sure
Right.
what they always go for, because when you get to where you're playing very frequently in ladder seasons, it's just kind of it's going to be based off of what you see there, like in the 10 lineup, and so I would say that it's very likely that Ninja is quite flexible. I would not be surprised if they lean more towards what you normally expect in as far as kind of general strong picks and stuff. I'm pretty sure, unless I'm getting it mixed up with someone else, but I'm fairly certain that they are really big fan of Cloak and Dagger, and were one of the proponents for them in one of the latter seasons that they actually did quite well in. However, I don't know if it's to the degree where you can really pick them in a more general tournament setting, though that would be really cool if we saw something like that, just the right circumstances lining up and getting a really off-the-wall pick there. But yeah, I would say that they're probably pretty prepared for most fighters and strategies and should be able to pilot quite well regardless.
For sure. Based on the League stats here, we're seeing that Medusa is their most played by far, by 10 games ahead from second place, 31 games, with a 71% win rate overall. Pretty darn good. Medusa, I mean, I don't think I have to tell anyone who Medusa is. She may not be big three anymore, but she's definitely still up there. Followed by Achilles, which is, really solid, strong fighter. Pretty well known in the competitive scene. And then here's where it gets interesting. Tied for second with Achilles is Raptors.
Wow.
Both with 21 games played. And then third would be Alice. So pretty cool, top 4 roster of most played characters here. Medusa, Achilles tend to be something that's expected. They tend to be fighters that are just consistently around the meta since their presence. But Raptors is a little more surprising. I think Raptors is actually a really solid counter pick, and just in general in the meta, I feel like their stocks are going up.
Yeah.
And then Alice, been solid since she came out, and I think she's always been like the middle ground fighter that's just always going to be around because she's got enough tools to be able to do a couple things here and there.
Yeah, I've played a lot of Alice myself, and I've always been a pretty big proponent of her. She's quite well-rounded. She can handle most matchups. It's just those rough counter picks like Wukong and Muldoon that really give her more trouble, but she can be a good surprise pick, especially if your draft goes deeper into the roster. I wouldn't expect that as much in BanQuest as in something like Arsenal, but you never know. And the Raptors pick is really surprising because, like you mentioned, Zach, it's hard to tell with these players who play a lot of ladder whether or not those are really comfort picks or if it's just, you know, they had fun playing that fighter that specific ladder season and just grinded a bunch of games during that time. So that can kind of throw off the stats, which it plays into their benefit, honestly, in multiple ways, because not only are they harder to track down as far as their actual comfort picks, but also it just gives them more experience with a wider variety of fighters. And in these big tournaments, that can definitely play a big part. It's not just fundamentals, although that is the majority of what is going to get you far in a tournament is fundamentals of Unmatched, but also those little edges like we talked about. So just being well-rounded and being able to play comfortably with a fighter that fits the draft more than, you know, fits your comfort. So that's a big thing. And I think I have seen Ninja play some Raptors on stream before, maybe in some Team League matches or so. And I remember being very impressed. So that would be really cool to see. I hope we're going to see some Raptors because I'm sure everybody would be hyped about that. But it looks like we are, we're going to take the stream down very briefly, guys. I'm sorry about that, but we're going to take it down very, very brief. We're going to change a little bit of settings just so we can get a few better video options for you guys viewing at home. So let's take that down real quick and we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. All right, welcome back, everybody. Hopefully we didn't lose any of you, but we just wanted to give the best viewing experience possible to everybody out there. So hopefully that helps out. But yeah, we're really looking forward to getting into these matches. And the players are working on their picks and bans, the draft right now. And so we should have that information for you guys momentarily. But before we actually get into the thick of it with all of this, we've been talking a lot about this game Unmatched and everything, but some of you might be new to the game or the community and might not really know what this is all about. So we have a short little video just explaining a little bit about what Unmatched is and how to play it. So let's go ahead and cut to that briefly, and then we'll get into the action. Unmatched is a card-based tactical fighting game featuring various characters from history, literature, and fantasy. The goal? Reduce the opposing hero's health to 0. Players take turns performing any combination of 2 actions, from maneuvering, scheming, or attacking. A maneuver causes the player to draw a card from their deck and lets them move any of their fighters around the board. They may increase the distance of their move by discarding a card known as a boost. When a scheme card is played, simply follow the text on the card to complete the action. For an attack, the turn player will choose a card from their hand to place face down for combat. The opponent will have the option to place one of their cards down as defense. The value on the cards will determine the damage dealt in combat. Melee fighters can only attack adjacent spaces, while ranged fighters can also attack any space within their color-coordinated zone. Some characters have sidekicks to help them out, and others fight solo. Each hero has their own unique abilities and deck of cards to bring the character to life. Because in battle, there are no equals. Alright, so there's Unmatched in a nutshell. This game is incredible. If you have not played it yet, I definitely would recommend trying it out. Big props to Restoration Games for not only creating this game that we love, but also sponsoring these official tournaments. And they're just the greatest company to work with in terms of like interaction between the community and the creators. They're just the best. We get to meet up with them at conventions, and they're always super nice and welcoming, and to everybody online as well, all over the world. So they're just a top-notch company, so I highly recommend showing them some support and try out the game because it's great for all player skill levels, you know, not just us crazy competitive folks, but even for casual play at home, you can finish a game in like 20 minutes. All the decks are pre-built, so you just pick your favorite fighter, and there's tons to choose from. So go online, do a little bit of research on what fighters are available, buy the box that seems the most interesting to you just based off the characters, open it up, and just, you know, shuffle up your deck, get the fighters on the board, and start playing some games because it's very quick and easy to set up. That's part of the beauty of Unmatched. And it has an ever-growing roster because the latest release was Slings and Arrows, which was the Shakespeare-themed set. And that one was very cool. We have William Shakespeare, as well as some of his creations like Titania and the Wayward Sisters, and Hamlet in that one. And so that's really cool, extremely thematic. The art is always incredible on all of these sets. So go check it out if you're a Shakespeare fan. But if not, there's plenty of other things like Marvel. We have Jurassic Park. You know, we have fairy tale things like Little Red and Beowulf. We have Robin Hood and Bigfoot. We have Battle of Legends, which is just a great mix of classic heroes from history or legend, whatever it is. So there's something for everybody out there. And Angel, I know you did a stream the other day talking about one of the newest upcoming releases. You want to give a little bit of talk about what's coming? Look at that. He's got the mug at the ready.
Yeah. So speaking of the Unmatched roster expanding, I'd like to quickly shout out one of the most exciting Kickstarters of the year. The whole planet is talking about it. Everyone is talking about it constantly. Unmatched Adventures Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is currently live on Kickstarter. I want to give so much love to it because it's probably going to be my favorite set, and it means so much to me. So please check it out. I'm going to link it in the chat here because I want this Kickstarter to pop off. It's already been going great. So keep it going, folks. And let's see those 6 new fighters. That's something I'd like to point out. We got the 4 turtles themselves, and then Shredder and Krang are going to be playable with their hero decks as well.
That's pretty incredible. That is going to be one jam-packed set. That's going to be crazy value. And it is another one of the Unmatched Adventures sets, so it's co-op mode. So not just 1v1s can you play in this game. You can also do 2v2s, which is a ton of fun. You can do free-for-alls, 3 or 4 players, even 5. You can try and be crazy and do 6. I've seen people do it. But then there's the co-op mode, where it's the players versus kind of an AI in a sense, but you face the villains, and they have their own deck of cards, and you'll shuffle it up, and you draw off the top, and that dictates their actions and whatnot. So very cool game mode. There's just a way to play for everybody to enjoy. So TMNT, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, is going to be a huge one. It's a big IP. I know a lot of people are really excited for it, like Angel here. And yeah, definitely look for the Kickstarter for that one that is up now. As well as we have the Witcher sets coming out later this year. There are 2 sets, 3 fighters each, so 6 new fighters as well for The Witcher. So any fans of The Witcher games or comics or whatnot, go ahead and check those out because they are very cool. Zach, you want to talk a little bit about The Witcher? I know you had a sweet reveal just the other day.
Yeah. So there are going to be 2 Witcher sets coming out. There is going to be a bundle for both of them, as well as an alternate mini for Geralt and a foil pack for both sets. So a foil for each fighter of the 6 fighters. But yeah, they are going to be releasing hopefully sometime late this year, either November or December. And yeah, there is Steel and Silver, and that has Geralt, Ciri, and the Ancient Leshen. And then there's Realm's Fall that has Philippa, Yennefer and Triss, and Eredin. So those are the 6 Witcher fighters. If you're a fan of the games, the books, or the show, I think you will absolutely love what they've done with these characters. Some really cool minis that have been shown off so far. We've seen a little bit as far as cards go. For example, Geralt has his gear cards, so similar to Buffy, where she gets to choose her sidekick, and if some of the cards in her deck change based on that choice, Geralt has these gear cards that he chooses. He has 3 different types of gear: sword, armor, and potion. And you choose one of the 2 options before the game starts, and you shuffle those cards in. And so you have a fully customizable deck, essentially, which shows it kind of matches with the versatility that he has as a Witcher, where he's always prepared for any situation. So if that's any indication of how thematic and evocative the rest of the abilities in the sets will be, then I think we're in for a good time. So definitely check those out once the pre-order for that goes live as well.
For sure. Those sets, I can speak from experience, they are very, very cool. And speaking of The Witcher as well, if you guys stay tuned tomorrow, sometime during the grand finals, we may have a little something to show off for you in regards to The Witcher sets. So look forward to that. Make sure you don't miss any of the action this weekend because we got a jam-packed weekend of Unmatched ready for you all. So it looks like the players are done with their fighter picks. So let's go ahead and bring up the fighter rosters on screen, and we can talk a little bit about those before we get into the games. So Kjet had Sherlock, She-Hulk, InGen, and Yananga. Ninja had Luke Cage, Achilles, Bigfoot, and Elektra. So we talked about the big three, Sherlock, Elektra, and Strange, debatably. But Sherlock and Elektra are easily the top two in the game, and we see both of them picked, not pre-banned. But then, of course, they ate the opponent's ban. So, I mean, it's kind of the same thing. The players tried to mind game themselves, and they're just not falling for it. They're like, okay, no, we all know that those are getting banned. So there's that. And then Bigfoot self-banned and She-Hulk self-banned. So I gotta say that the Bigfoot self-ban makes a lot of sense going up against InGen and Yananga and potentially She-Hulk, because when you're pre-banning, or when you're self-banning rather, it's simultaneous. And so you don't know for sure what your opponent's roster is going to look like after the self-bans. So yeah, it makes sense to get rid of Bigfoot. And then She-Hulk as well against Luke and Achilles. And Bigfoot She-Hulk is kind of even, but Luke and Achilles definitely can give some problems. So that leaves us with InGen and Yananga on Kjet's side and Luke and Achilles on Ninja's side. So what do you guys think about these remaining rosters?
Yeah, so the first thing that I want to call out is that this is a really good setup for Kjet. I feel like talking about like getting an edge in the draft, I think that just looking at these, I'd be much more comfortable from Kjet's side of things. I actually think that he did a really good job getting, because regardless of what Ninja's self-ban was, I think that as long as he self-banned She-Hulk, InGen and Yananga had a really good spread into the rest of the roster. I could see the argument behind self-banning Achilles as well. I think between that and Bigfoot, they're pretty close. But regardless, I think that InGen's really well positioned against Achilles. That one's not very fun from the Achilles side. No. And then Yananga definitely, I think she's definitely favored into Achilles, and the Luke one's close. Both fighters have stuff that works well for them in the matchup, but I do know that if both players know how to pilot it, I do think I give a little bit of an advantage to Yananga in that side as well. So I think what Ninja's looking to do here is get a win with Luke into InGen, and then try to beat Yananga with Achilles. It's not the easiest thing, but it's a very, I think it's one of the most played, if not the most played matchup as far as stats go on UM League. And while Yananga does have an edge, it's still a very back and forth matchup, a very exciting and fun one. So I do hope that we see it here today.
Yeah.
Agreed. And I'd like to point out that, don't sleep on Achilles InGen, because Achilles has a 12% win rate on UM League against Muldoon. So all jokes aside, I would have to mostly agree.
Yeah, the Achilles InGen matchup is really rough, but I agree with you, Zach. It's going to come down to Achilles versus Yananga, which I think is really cool. Because it's quite even, maybe slightly Yen favored if she gets the map. But if Achilles gets the map and goes to something small like Raptor Paddock, maybe, things can get very scary for Yananga very quickly. So you got to think, with Ninja being the follower, it looks like, then he's going to start with map on game 1. And so since Achilles is basically going to auto lose into InGen, I think you always start with Achilles if you're Ninja, because that way if you hit the InGen, fine, you lose most likely, and then you go InGen with map into Yanenga, and then you have to beat Yanenga with Luke on Yanenga's map. And then if Kjet ends up going with Yanenga first, then you get the Achilles Yanenga right off the bat. And I think the whole match really does hinge on that matchup right here, because I just don't see Achilles beating InGen. I would love to be proven wrong, and you know, stats are just stats. You said 12%, Angel, and that's incredibly low, but imagine how hype it would be if we saw one of the fabled 12% wins for Achilles. So,
For sure.
you never know. But yeah, I got to expect that Ninja is planning on opening up with Achilles, and we're going to find out soon. But they have some map bans as well. So, it looks like, well, I believe they get to ban maps, though, after the fighters. So we'll talk about the map bans after we find out which fighters are being played in Game 1. I can't expect anything else from Ninja other than Achilles. I think that's definitely the way to go. If you're Kjet, I don't think it necessarily matters. You probably start with InGen just so that you can get a win under your belt, even if you do, you know, if you run up into the Achilles, even though both players are kind of expecting the outcome of that one, if you get the win and you put your opponent on the back foot mentally, that can definitely make a difference in the following games, because their back is against the wall, their tournament life is on the line, and you don't want to make any mistakes, and then the pressure is really on. So it's just a little bit of a mental thing there, and I think that could make a big difference. And it looks like we are going to see InGen Achilles Game 1. So as expected, yeah, Ninja open up with the Achilles because that's the smart play, I believe. And Kjet, again, just being like, okay, let me take my free win, and we'll go on to Game 2, and we'll play it out from there with Ninja's back against the wall. So yeah, it's playing out as expected, and you know, I can't say I'm surprised because these players, again, they're in the top 4 for a reason. So they did the map bans. So it looks like the bans were Globe Theater, Raptor Paddock, and Sanctum. So all incredibly small maps. Now, with those map bans out there, so no Globe, no Raptor Pad, no Sanctum, what do you guys think Ninja might be looking to pick for Achilles in terms of the map here? Any predictions? You got to think other type maps are maybe like Point Pleasant is not super tight, but it's relatively small and it's very wide open. So
I think
Smaller than it looks, yeah.
yeah, it's definitely smaller than it looks, and it has the benefit of not or having a lot of connections, which means there aren't corridors for InGen to kind of wall off with workers and traps as easily. Although that being said, we did see that map. We saw Kjet play on that map as InGen multiple times, and really show that it's not a very bad map for InGen overall. Now, it wasn't against a heavy hitter like Achilles for the most part, so perhaps being able to be reached is more relevant. I would also be looking at T-Rex Paddock as a potential option. There's a little bit more as far as choke points go, so that could be a reason not to go there, but it's got to move for center and pretty good options, especially when Pat's still alive, to position well and keep pressure up. Because you really just want to be attacking InGen as much as possible, because he doesn't have a large quantity of defenses in the deck. In fact, he has one of the lowest quantities of any fighter in the deck at effectively 8 if we're not counting regroup.
yeah,
And most of the time we're not going to, even though it can matter. You really don't want to be blocking with it if at all possible.
unless of course we're in Full Sun Friday, right?
Well, of course, then it's
Then
the
it's-
best card in the game.
Yeah.
So.
Speaking of which, though, let's go ahead and take a quick look at the fighters' decks. We could start off with Muldoon here. You mentioned how he's only got about 8 defenses. So let's take a look. We'll get those on screen. And Zach, I'm going to let you talk a little bit about InGen, actually, because I know you are somewhat of an InGen player yourself.
Yeah, I like me some InGen. So InGen, which consists of Robert Muldoon and his InGen workers, is a fighter that I would say leans more towards like a very control-oriented game style. He has these traps that he can place at the start of his turn. He can put one in his zone, And whenever an opposing fighter steps on the trap, they are forced to stop their movement. They lose all remaining movement from the maneuver or whatever effect is letting them move, and then they take 1 damage, and you draw a card as Muldoon. So he has 8 of these that he can deploy throughout the game, and they give him a lot of options of blocking opposing fighters' movements and positioning well in order to avoid being attacked. Because as we can see here on the card list, the only cards that Muldoon can block with are the 2 copies of I've Hunted Most Things That Can Hunt You, 3 Feints, and 3 Leapaways. He does have the regroups, but again, you don't really want to be blocking with a 1-value defense because you're going to be taking too much damage over that, and especially because Muldoon only has 14 health and no healing in the deck, he has to be very careful with his health. He also has 3 workers. They are 1 HP sidekicks. And he has 2 copies of this card, Call for Backup, which is probably the key card in the deck. The most relevant card as far as being able to continue with his game plan. It allows you to choose 2 of the following options. You can place up to 3 traps, place all of your defeated workers in spaces in Muldoon's zone, or draw 2 cards. Most of the time you're going to see people use the place traps and revive workers, because if you get full value, you get 9 total workers throughout the game, the 3 you start with and the up to 6 that you can revive with the Call for Backups. And then you also get to place traps. A lot of times people will place 0 traps since it says up to 3, because that lets you essentially use this as a pass and not go further into your deck. Because one of the things that Muldoon does have to be careful about is placing too many traps, because in the late game your opponent can force you to draw by stepping on them, and if you're out of deck you take 2 damage to exhaustion every draw you take, so they're kind of trading their 1 damage for 2 damage into you, which is quite relevant if you get behind. However, in the meantime, the traps can be used in a few other ways in addition to blocking your opponent's movement, and one of those is the attack card, They Should All Be Destroyed, which is a 4 that gets +1 to its value for each trap that your opponent is adjacent to. So you can get this as a 5 pretty much anytime by putting a trap down against someone who's maybe moved in to attack you or is within your zone, and then attack them with the 5. You can also set up for bigger ones, including I know that we mentioned Prospero earlier, but this kind of became known as his signature move in playing Call for Backup, placing traps down, and then attacking with a huge They Should All Be Destroyed, like a 7 or maybe 8 value, depending on if you can really get a good positioning for it. But even as a 5 or a 6, it's still quite strong. And then moving on to the 4-value defenses, these are kind of the bread and butter of what you're looking for from Muldoon. You'll be wanting to block off with traps and workers until you can make sure you have at least 1 or 2 of these in hand. The 4-value defense is the I've Hunted Most Things That Can Hunt You. It is a essentially max value block, as it's often referred to, for being one of the best just values for defense. And it lets you move all of your fighters up to 5 spaces, and you can move through opposing fighters. So not only does it block really well, especially against a big hit from something like an Angry Achilles, for instance, but also lets you reposition everyone and kind of get them where you want, whether you want to retreat or maybe pin your opponent in, set up for Muldoon's attacks later, etc. And then Leap Away, of course, does a similar thing, though it has to win combat, and it only moves 1 of the fighters in the combat instead of all your fighters. Finally, we've got Rending Shot here. It is another really good mobility tool for InGen, and this can be used by either him or the workers, so you can kind of harass your opponent with not a huge attack, but it lets you move them afterwards, whether that means moving them away just so they can't attack you as easily on your turn or on their turn, or pushing them into a trap to get damage and draw. So yeah, InGen's whole game plan is going to be keeping the opponent away, pressuring with the workers, getting attacks in with Muldoon when possible, and just trying to essentially survive until you can win, either through exhausting your opponent or peppering them with enough little attacks that it adds up and drains their resources.
All right, very good. So that's Muldoon for you. Now let's go ahead and take a look at Achilles real quick. And Angel, you can give us the rundown on Achilles.
Yeah, of course. I'd be happy to. Achilles, at face value, seems like a pretty simple peanut butter and jelly type character. He's got big attacks. He's like Brothers in Arms, like a skirmish. He's got action gains. big blocks, spear throws, just a nice and easy, deal 2 damage to an opposing fighter in Achilles' zone. However, usually the simplest characters have the most complex strategies at this high level of competitive play. And that's where Patroclus comes in. See, because Achilles' ability is that when Patroclus is defeated, he'll discard 2 random cards from his hand, and for the rest of the game, he'll get +2 to all of his attacks, and also he has to draw a card every time he wins a combat. So, choosing when Patroclus goes down is one of the hardest decisions in the game, in my opinion. And that goes for both the person going against Achilles and the person playing as Achilles. And that's going to allow you to shift a lot of your cards up and down depending on whether Patroclus is alive or not. For example, Under Achilles' Helm kind of switches its playability when Patroclus is alive versus when Patroclus is defeated. When Pat's alive, you want to obviously use it to swap in so Pat can take some damage, Achilles doesn't take it, and Pat can get smacked back instead. And afterward, on top of that, you have when Pat is defeated, it becomes a boost 4 that he's allowed to boost in with and do some very strong positioning games. On top of that, we have Skirmish and Brothers in Arms becoming 6s when Pat's down. Battle Hardened, allowing you to keep a loop going with either Battle Hardened itself or recurring some other important card you may need, like Spear Throw having additional passes and whatnot. And a couple Pat cards that are going to be key to him using those while he's alive.
All right, very good. So Achilles, definitely a strong fighter in general, but we'll see how he can do against Muldoon here. And we'll go ahead and take a look at the map as well. It looks like it is going to be Point Pleasant, as we talked about. So Kjet is no stranger to playing Muldoon on this map, so he knows it in and out. He knows the choke points already, so when you can figure things like that out ahead of time, it just lightens the load mentally that you have, because you're making so many little decisions during a competitive game of Unmatched that your brain just kind of starts to get fried at times, because all the little micro decisions add up, and one wrong tiny little decision can have a major impact in the outcome of the game. Sometimes it's win or lose based off one little decision or one positioning error. So when you can have that knowledge of the map and the choke points and whatnot already before going in, it just lightens the load on you mentally, and that can make a big impact. And on this map, not only are there some sneaky choke points, but it's also relatively open in terms of maps. So Achilles might be able to sneak in and find some opportunities for some big attacks, and maybe make an upset here, maybe. So we'll see what happens. But it looks like the players are just about ready. I believe we are set up. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into the Vorpal and check out what happens in Game 1 for Kjet versus Ninja.
You gotta love that Summer Legends 2024 semis is starting off with such a classic matchup. It's definitely one-sided, but I mean, Achilles, Muldoon, I think ever since their respective releases, they have made themselves very present in the meta. And it's also interesting to see that despite how much the meta has shifted, Muldoon still always finds a way to sneak his way into semis or grands of every summer or winter champions.
Yeah, so we see, starting out with a trap here, we're going to see, I imagine early on, quite a few traps used. Honestly, I could see this being one of the games where we end up seeing more than usual, because usually you don't see all 8 traps used, just because you have to worry about late game and drawing too much. However, given Achilles and how he plays out and is generally the one to exhaust, we might see that more, especially because if you can get, or if you can force Achilles to go through traps early, you can give yourself more options in hand, which would lead to you being less likely to take hits and whatnot. That being said, if Ninja goes for a strategy where he tries to keep Pat alive instead of killing him off, he could look to kind of counter that type of strat. So it'll kind of be determined on how he goes and plays with Pat, because there's multiple ways that Achilles can kind of utilize the sidekick in various matchups. So be interesting to see either way.
Yeah, I do agree with you, Zach. I do wanted to give just a quick mention that the stream banner, we do have it flipped around. So for everybody watching at home, Kjet is on the right and Ninja is on the left. We'll go ahead and switch that in between the next game. But just to make you all aware, they are flipped. But yeah, I think, Zach, to your point, I agree that Pat is going to make a huge difference in this game. And I think, honestly, in this matchup, you want to keep Pat alive as long as possible, which is typically the opposite of what Achilles tries to do. But I think if Pat goes down, Achilles just becomes too linear, and Muldoon is really good against those linear bruiser type fighters like Bigfoot or Solo Achilles.
Yep.
Agreed. Despite Muldoon's lack of defense, the sheer amount of walling that he can do between his traps and his workers, it just makes it really hard for those simple sluggers to be able to reach him and really do much of anything. So makes up for the fact that he doesn't have a lot of defense. So I agree that Pat does need to survive for a while in order to get a lot of value off and keep his tempo right so that he doesn't just automatically exhaust against Muldoon.
One of the things we see early on here is the ability for Injun between traps and workers to completely stop your opponent from reaching you, because in that situation, that last turn, it was impossible even if Achilles wanted to get in and attack Muldoon himself. It wouldn't have been doable. The best you could do is maybe boost onto that trap and then use spear throw, but you're not really going to be looking to do that, especially if your plan is to kind of hold back and try to keep Pat alive as long as possible to counter Ingen's strongest ability, which is going into the late game if he can.
Yeah, we see a couple more passive decisions from both of our players here. Achilles stepping away, Ingen following up. We do see the worker coming in to attack on Pat.
Look at that wall Kjet has set up, though. He has every access point blocked off by either a trap or a worker, and that's exactly what you want to be doing as Muldoon in a matchup like this. You stay safe back behind your barricade, you send out one worker to go out and pester the opponent, knock out their defenses and their cards, and you just sit back and laugh as they struggle to get in on you.
Yeah, it's really the strength of having the 3 sidekicks that can attack with a good amount of the stuff in the deck. You know, stuff like running shots are plentiful. You've got second shot for damage. You've also got the worker card Tactical Advance that can let you reposition. We do see a second shot here.
We see Pat defending with a skirmish. Seems like both players are aware that Pat's survivability is going to determine how this game goes.
Yep.
Second shot going into a skirmish, big block, big attack. Let's see if Kjet decides to boost this.
It will cost a 3 boost to be able to stop skirmish from winning and getting its effect. The other interesting thing to note as well is when you have a sidekick against Muldoon, if you have like multi HP sidekick like Pat is, you can always move through a trap with one of your fighters and then clear the way for your next one to go through. And so if you only have Achilles, like if Pat does die off because Muldoon understands, yeah, I need to take this option away from Achilles, it will be very difficult for Achilles to get through both workers and traps instead of just workers when you have a little bit more flexibility to get around traps with a sidekick.
If we end up seeing they should all be destroyed and 1 damage being applied to Pat.
And what do you think about that, Angel? That seems kind of costly to deal 1 measly damage to Pat.
I'm under the assumption that Kjet is trying to do everything he can to take out Pat, including trade away some of your big attacks like they should all be destroyed, just to take out Pat as soon as possible, because if you get like a turn 2 KO on Pat, that's massive. See, Day of Your Doom played into the worker. No damage is going to be dealt to Pat, because that is the one that is optional. Battle Frenzy is the one that is obligatory. Worker goes down, and that is a simple pass from Achilles.
See, and that gives away right there what the intention is for Achilles and Pat. When you have the opportunity to deal damage to Pat and you choose not to, you're telling your opponent straight up, hey, I want to keep Pat alive.
Yep.
And that lets your opponent be like, okay, if you want to keep Pat alive, I guess I want him dead. So
Yeah.
Right.
it's a very very clear signal there.
There's definitely feels like a boss fight right now with Achilles, where we're right now in the first phase where Muldoon is going to be trying to snipe Pat down, and after that we enter the final phase with Angry Achilles. We'll see how long Pat can last, though. Pat, if you are using your skirmishes for defense, Pat actually has quite a lot to block with. Between the skirmishes, the Wileys, even Battle Hardened is nice. And Feint as well. So pretty standard kit of defenses to keep Pat alive.
Yeah, there's definitely no shortage, and I think the Battle Harden you mentioned is actually the most important one, especially in this matchup, because when it's typically the workers pestering you, they can throw a lot of attacks over the course of a few turns. Basically every turn they get to go and attack, and you need to make sure you have defenses for all of that. And Battle Harden being able to loop itself, if you can find that second copy, is really, really important, because the workers don't typically hit very big. We saw a second shot boosted up to a 5, but that's the max damage a worker can do in a single attack, and there's only one other copy of second shot. So workers typically are attacking with things like regroups or rending shots, which is only a 3, right? And so if you can have that Battle Hardened and you can have a continuous stream of defense to block the little chip damage, that can be really impactful.
Yeah, the only way to really stop it is to attack with a feint, but that's a bit of a tall ask to use one of your 8 defenses for Muldoon against or on offense, especially
Yeah.
if they don't go for the Battle Hardened. Like, once they've gone for the Battle Hardened, you can maybe assume that it'll be more likely, but still. Ooh.
The offensive leap away. Speaking of using your defense as
Wow.
offense, choosing to attack with one of your 8 defenses, but you're hitting with a 4 over Wiley. It's not bad, it's 1 damage, but unfortunately you do lose your worker and you simultaneously lose a defense. Something like this could come to bite Kjet in the future, but I definitely understand the perspective of wanting to just toss in some surprising big numbers and maybe be like, oh, well, what if Pat just takes it, assuming that it's going to be like a regroup or something, and then get punished. So, interesting choice. We'll see how it pays off.
Yeah, very interesting. But I think that is Kjet telling his opponent, I don't think you're going to attack me more than 7 times, you know? Like, I don't think I'm going to need all of these defenses, because I'm not going to let you get in for that many attack opportunities, which
Agreed.
is quite miserable for Achilles. But if he can find his way in and keep Pat alive long enough to find those openings, then yeah, maybe that leap away could come back to bite him in the end.
I mean, positioning is one of the hardest things to do in this game, and whenever a player reaches the skill level that players like these two here have, you'll see like Muldoon be a lot more present because he is very positioning based and tends to be underestimated for that same reason, because a lot of people haven't fully mastered positioning yet. But a player like Kjet, who's so accustomed to Muldoon saying, I'm going to hit you with Leapway, I definitely agree, feels like I'm so confident that you will not be able to reach me 7 times, more than 7 times, because I will just toss a defense at you here, and I think that I'll be fine. Half of the traps have gone up now. Only 1 worker left for now. Achilles electing to double maneuver, remain defensive.
Seems like we're having a little bit of connection lag here. There we go. And looks like we need to update the deck counts.
You telling me the Navy Pier deck isn't a thing? I'm disappointed.
Obviously, the Helicarrier deck is much more powerful there. It's got a lot more cards
It's
in
true.
it.
It's true.
We'll try another
And we're not
refresh.
talking about the Hell's Kitchen deck?
Well, you know, that one's banned because it's too strong in competitive play.
Yeah, we all know that, you know, that payphone, nah.
Yeah.
No
The Hell's
thank
Kitchen
you.
deck has recursion.
Yeah, that's just too much.
Just for those who are viewing in and want to know the deck counts, we do currently have Achilles and Muldoon both at 20. We see the worker coming in and attacking Pat from range. It's going to be going into a feint. Let's see what's attacked with.
Ooh,
It's going to be the second shot. That's a very nice feint for Achilles here. No more second shots for the game, and Pat is still sitting pretty at 4 health.
That's
We also saw a
massive.
remote detonation be used to boost in, so that's one pass that Muldoon has given up here.
Makes you wonder if Muldoon is attempting to go for a more offensive route, knowing Achilles isn't going to be attacking often. Because he's definitely been throwing away some resources to try and take out Pat. All to do 2 damage. I mean, look at what's been gone so far, and that's what it took to deal 2 damage to Pat. 2 second shots. They should all be destroyed, leap away, and a remote detonation. Meanwhile, on the other side here, we've got Skirmish, Wily, and Feint. All pretty solid defenses, all the ones that I had brought up previously that you could block with. And a Day of Your Doom.
Sorry for the technical difficulties, everybody. I believe the stream, they can hear everything you're saying, so good job, Angel, giving them the play-by-play. But we're having a little bit of video issue at the moment we're trying to resolve.
Yep, I'll quickly keep everyone posted here that, once again, Muldoon has used 4 traps. We're currently in Achilles' turn. Achilles is sitting at 7 cards, got to make a decision whether he wants to go for the worker, maybe go for Muldoon, since Muldoon is out in the open, even though he does have traps. We see Achilles boost with under Achilles' helm and pop the trap above Muldoon, dealing himself 1 damage, and Pat going up to the blue zone right next to another trap.
I absolutely
So
love
Achilles is
this
electing
play.
to go aggressive here.
I love this play for a multitude of reasons. First of all, Achilles doesn't care about taking damage himself. He's got 18 health to begin with. He's got plenty. He's fine popping those traps. Also, boosting with an under Achilles helm. That card is not a defense that Pat can use. So I really don't think that you care so much about those, because typically you want them to swap Pat in as the defender in order to take the damage. But in this matchup, when you're just trying to keep Pat alive, you don't want to be swapping Pat in to take damage. And then it's just a blank 2 for Achilles. So that 4 boost is really valuable. So I really, really like that play right there.
Agreed. Electing not to go for the attack, using the spear throw instead. Seems like Achilles wants to deal the damage, get the pass, but also I think the key thing here is that a lot of Muldoon's defense moves his fighters around, and we're trying to keep the worker out of play.
Yeah, that's a very interesting decision when you finally get an opportunity to make an attack and you choose not to take it. I would have loved to see maybe a double attack, but maybe Ninja wants to save those as boosts. Because that could potentially knock out 2 defenses from Muldoon if it's not fainted.
We see they should all be destroyed going into it. Blessed by Hermes here. It's going to be a 6 into a 3. Pretty good damage from Muldoon here, evening out the health for the most part. Hermes is going to move Pat and Achilles to center stage.
Could have been one more if he had put the trap up above where Muldoon's standing instead of where he did. But I think he was valuing the positioning of the trap more than the damage there.
I think I would too.
A really good option though to kind of negate that to a degree, because now Achilles has kind of centered a bit more.
I do like this positioning.
Yeah.
Agreed. We see a maneuver from Muldoon for second action. Muldoon currently having a pretty nice hand lead here. As for Dex, we're looking at 19 for Achilles, 18 for Muldoon, so pretty darn even there too.
Interesting positioning spot Muldoon is in. He's definitely vulnerable, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's quite comfortable on defenses at the moment, having such a big hand advantage and plenty of options.
For sure, especially considering Achilles hasn't attacked yet.
Yeah, and the problem too when Pat is still alive is that Achilles just is very slow. He doesn't have any card draw. So Muldoon has plenty of card draw, so he's not going to run out of, you know, defenses or attacks, and he's just not going to run out. He's going to keep the pressure up, going to keep on the
Here's the
gas,
thing.
and Achilles is just going to have to weather the storm, which is very difficult.
Boosting with the regroup there to end adjacent to Pat is very telling. It could be a bluff, but on purposely ending adjacent to Pat just so you can body block Muldoon and keep him safe tells me I don't have any defense right now. I need to put this here. I don't have a choice. But obviously, that could be part of the bluff where Kjet is attempting to take NinjaSegun here for the fool and assume that that is the case. However, a skirmish into a worker here, undefended, into a pad attack could also be very scary for Muldoon if the case is that he has no defense.
True, but with Achilles so low in hand, I don't expect to see a play like that just because then he would only have 2 cards in hand, and unless he's got maybe Hermes or something to get Pat, you know, back to safety, it might be a little risky. Although if
Agreed,
you could,
especially since it's clear you want to keep Pat alive.
yeah, but if you could land an undefended hit for, like, let's say 5 damage that Pat typically throws, that would be a game changer potentially. Because then you no longer have to get in, you know, 7 times. You only have to get in maybe twice plus a spear throw, and you have Muldoon defeated. So, yeah, things can change really quickly if you can happen to land an undefended hit.
Speaking of undefended hits, one thing that Muldoon really hates is double attacks. Around the time that Battle Legends 2 came out, Muldoon saw a pretty sharp wow, and boosting with the Battle Frenzy here, taking 2 traps, could still attack the worker with Pat.
I think we'll see him back off here, put the initiative on Muldoon.
You know, well, just popping all the traps.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
I don't
Here's an
know about
interesting
that.
thing.
Interesting
Yeah,
play.
I'm under the assumption that that turn was NinjaSegun making an executive decision that we are now shifting to your standard scheduled Achilles program. Because not only did you step on 2 traps with Pat, bring him down to 2, but you also ended in Muldoon's zone.
That's true. Wow. And with such a hand advantage, obviously Kjet is going to make a double attack turn here, and Pat's going down. I don't see Pat living this, because even if you defend with a Hermes, surely Kjet has, you know, a rending shot to pull him right back in.
For sure.
He could also go for a leap away and then attack Achilles after the discard happens.
That would be very, very
would-
massive if Pat takes it.
It's very risky because he'd be within movement range. Like he'd be within a maneuver of Achilles, and he would have just used one of his remaining defenses, but depends on whether he thinks it's worth it or not. I could also just see this being a rending shot because if it's a skirmish or a Hermes for Pat on defense, he still gets to attack him again.
So Ninja's taken a long time to think about this one, and rightfully so, because there's a lot of mind games here. If he tries to defend with something like a Hermes, you have to worry that this is a, I believe it's called shooter, where it becomes a 5 if it's first action. So Pat would die in that case if he plays the Hermes. It was the rending shot, just going to take, so Kjet wanted to guarantee a follow-up attack. He's not going to get it, actually, because Pat ended up taking, but I'm sure Kjet's pretty happy with that outcome regardless.
As long as he's got one of his schemes, he can still prevent overdraw here.
That's
These
true.
5 rolls. Let's
All for
see.
backup would be gross because that just blocks Achilles off by summoning workers back in.
Let's see. What are we hitting?
Oh
my gosh.
Those are like probably the
The
2 best hits
best.
based on how Ninja's been playing this.
Ninja's like, are you kidding me? Just look at his facial expression here. That's
Yeah.
just brutal.
That is extremely rough. The I think those are easily probably the best 2 cards to hit with, especially like you said, based on how NinjaSegun's playing. I was assuming that was the route he's going for, was Battle Hardens, recur the Spear Throws, so on and so forth. But now at this point, you only have 1 Battle Harden left, and both Spear Throws are in the discard, which means Achilles is going to have to switch to a very aggressive play style here and just start going in and try to land as many hits as he can into Muldoon, which also means that Kjet is likely going to be aware of this and switch to a very higher defensive approach, which we see here when Kjet is discarding Shoot Her as one of his discards for overdrawing.
He didn't have the pass, though, so that's could be good news for Ninja. I don't really see any world after losing the Battle Hardened and the Spear Throw. I don't necessarily see a world in which Achilles can win in Fatigue. But if he has a under Achilles Helm, he can boost here and reach Muldoon barely.
The only way to reach currently.
I think you need to just hope that both call for backups are buried, because you've already used most of the traps. There's only 3 remaining, and you just need to go hyper aggro and just try to kill Muldoon. I think if you try to back off and do any sort of fatigue tricky game plan here, I just don't see it working out, because Achilles is definitely not good in fatigue.
Well, even if we're just looking at exhaustion math from this point, right? Because it's always relevant when you're Achilles. Muldoon still has 4 passes.
Yeah.
Which means he basically has 17 cards to your 15, and you guys are even on health. So you have to engage at some point. And as you engage, that's where, if you're forced to go through workers, you're going to be drawing more cards and maybe having to go through traps. And at that point, Muldoon doesn't mind as much, because if he's stopping you from attacking, he's saving health. He's doing a little bit of damage to you. Sure, he's going further into deck, but with how many passes and stuff he has left. And then eventually you can start sending workers at you if he really needs to. And you're either taking damage from the attack, or you're winning with your block and drawing a card, which is 2 damage in the long run when exhaustion is concerned.
Yep, and if you're playing towards exhaustion, you could, make the argument always, well, what if the call for backups are buried and they're, bottom of the deck? But when you're playing towards fatigue, you're going to see your entire deck. Both fighters are, so you can't really use that, logic in that case. So obviously, there's a very high chance that Ninja just didn't have the Helm last turn.
That's my assumption.
Yeah, you got to assume that.
We see Tactical Advance boosted with here going into the zone with Achilles. Engine Worker is going to continue the pressure here on Achilles. I think it's a win-win, because either A, you get some damage off, or B, Achilles keeps going lower into deck. So just keep some pressure on him and some pressure off of Muldoon. And we'll see what exactly happens here. We see a Worker attacking into Achilles. I like that he specifically didn't go adjacent, because then something like Wily would be pretty nasty. We see a Feint going to Tactical Advance. You're perfectly fine with that. You deal 1 damage over it. Pretty nice. Don't get the effect off, but that's okay. Would have been really massive, though, because if Tactical Advance went off and the movement happened... No, it's only a move 2. I was going to say, if it was a move 3, it could actually block off the under Achilles Helm from being able to boost into Muldoon.
Yeah, I think Ninja was expecting a rending shot, so...
Yeah. Yeah, because pushing him into the corner here would just be a disaster, because then he can't reach at all.
Yeah.
You'd be able to maybe boost and attack the worker, but that's not really what you want to be doing. Honestly, you don't really want to. There's the Helm. We don't want to be attacking the worker at all, because it just gives Muldoon more value when he does get the call for backup. Because if Muldoon can squeeze every little bit out of the workers, he's going to want to.
So we're likely... I would guess this is just an outright Brothers. We're probably going to see a 4 immediately from the get-go, but... if it is a test and it goes into a feint, that could also be nice.
Wow.
Ooh. Starting with a test here.
That's really good.
Yeah, Muldoon's going to have to deal with a 5 now. Already losing one of his Hunteds.
Hunted gets to reposition. And then test is going to trigger again as a 5 value attack. So guaranteed damage here and guaranteed card draw for Achilles. Which at this point, I think he wants as much as he can get. Okay, another value block for Kjet, so 1 damage over the leap. But that's, what, 3 out of 5 big defenses gone?
Yep.
Yep.
And if those big defenses go away and you have 6s going into feints, health can drop extremely quickly.
Yeah, Muldoon's going to have to start bunkering up here. Putting a trap down makes sense. You want to start blocking off that area. You have the worker attacking into Achilles, keeping the pressure on. And I would assume that Muldoon afterward is going to be heading into that top left corner.
Suddenly the hand counts are even, though. Surprisingly,
It's
no?
just skirmish going into tactical here.
So skirmish
It's actually
will
really
win.
interesting. Achilles could pop the trap just so he doesn't have to deal with it on his turn.
I
But
would love to see that. Yes.
yep, that's exactly what
Exactly.
we see here.
Great play by Ninja right there. Also
Very good
getting more
call.
towards center stage. It's always helpful.
And also gets to draw the card because he won the combat, so it's not as threatening to be in Muldoon's zone for that second action.
That was huge.
Because I highly doubt Muldoon is planning on attacking here.
There's no way Muldoon attacks again. Into a potential Hermes.
Yeah.
I mean, you only have one more guaranteed defense movement option, so if you ever let Achilles get a double attack, if you don't have that second blue defense, you're in trouble.
And it's where you really have to make a call on the doubles, whether you're gonna be able to feint them or not. Because if you successfully feint a double, you take one, Achilles draws, and then you don't have to worry about the
That's
second attack. But if
huge.
you feint a 6, it's very painful for you. So
Yeah.
Yes.
And I want to point out this positioning from Kjet. Look at this. This map is so incredibly interconnected. It's hard to make corridors, but look at this positioning. I mean, Achilles has to boost with a helm, his last helm, and go 6 to reach Muldoon here, even though he looks so close.
Yep.
Expert positioning.
Very well positioned.
And that is what makes top players top players. They've optimized every aspect of this game, and positioning is one of the biggest things
Oh,
in the
he's
whole
got
game.
it.
And
You
he's
see
got
the
it.
third helm.
Wow, that is huge.
This could be a very big turn right now,
Yes.
depending on what Kid has to block with. It's a
Feint
feint
into the
going into a
6.
6.
That's what you need to see if you're Achilles. Things are getting interesting.
yeah, just
Wow.
imagine if those were reversed. The last 2 interactions, if the feint
For
had gone
sure.
into the double, and if one of the 4s had been available here, Muldoon would be at 2 more health and still have an extra 4 in hand.
Massive.
Yep.
The downside now for Achilles, though, is that he is out of helm, so he can only move 5 at most from here on out, and his only 3 boosts are the 2 copies of Test for Weakness, which means he's not going to be able to have that mind game as readily available if he has to use them to reach, which he probably does at this point in time.
Yeah. We're going to start seeing, like you said, Achilles can now only move up to 5 now that all the boost 4s are gone. We're probably going to start seeing some decks running down, both fighters at 10, InGen just going into 9 after that maneuver. And you want, for Muldoon, I was going to say, you want to see the call for backup as soon as possible, because otherwise you're starting to run out of defense and it's going to get scary. I think for the rest of the game, Muldoon's going to be walling up, and Achilles has to play cat and mouse here, because again, those discards from Pat's death are massive. I think those are really going to come in the late game and decide who takes it here, but we'll see if Achilles can come back and get that damage through. It's got a lot of workers to get through, though.
He can't. Oh, he's putting a trap. Okay, I was going to say, without the trap, he wouldn't actually be able to completely block off Achilles from reaching with the 3 boost, but with the workers and the 1 trap, he can.
Amazing.
Yep.
You
And
don't
I'd
often
love
see
to,
that.
once again, praise the expert positioning here, because you're aware that that one route is the route that reaches Muldoon, and you on purposely put a trap, which I think you were about to say, John. You don't often see people place traps with call for backup.
Yep, but it is there. It is an optional effect, as well as the draw too. We typically just see 0 traps placed and 3 workers brought back, or however many workers you can get. But real Muldoon players, they know all their options at all times, and we saw it right there from Kjet.
Yep. The other thing to note as well is that Muldoon's currently in the center of the board, which is move 3 from all of the other starting spaces, and it's move 4 from the furthest spot you can get, which is down there in the bottom right corner at the moment. So Muldoon taking center here also means that if Achilles does go and engage a worker, Muldoon can basically get to one of the corners and make it very difficult to reach once again for Achilles, because Achilles can't currently take center given where InGen is occupying.
You see an attack into a worker. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm assuming that this is battle hardened. Do we risk a feint?
It's very risky, but you still have 2, so you could try for it. That at the same time, Ninja might be thinking, well, you know, he might consider feinting to stop a battle hardened. So do I throw something else just to catch that play out if he goes for it?
Do you see the
taking
take here?
Oh, and
Joined
would
brothers.
have been a wasted feint. So
For
good
sure.
call there by Kjet.
We're in an interesting spot health-wise because Muldoon seems like he has a lot at 7, but if he simply ends with only one big max value block, and he gets hit by a double attack and has to take a 5 undefended, he drops to 2, which means he dies to any attack that's a 6 or a spear throw. So that kind of means he can't attack Achilles anymore with anything other than feint, because if you attack into a battle hardened and the spear throw comes back, then it's lethal. So there's that interaction to look out for, as well as if you defend 2 6s with feints, that's also lethal. So there's like a couple of outs here for Achilles, and it really is just going to depend on what Kjet has in hand, where all of his defenses lie in the deck, and how the coin flips work out in terms of the combat.
Oof,
We
not
see a
great
running
for
shot going
Achilles
to a
here.
heal here.
Pushing away and drawing a card is not great for Achilles, of course, but there's not much he can do to avoid it at this stage.
Yep.
He is at a spot where he can boost with a Pat card. We do still have one of each. Yeah, we still have 1 Battle Frenzy and 1 Day of Your Doom, so could boost with a Pat card and reach that worker on Muldoon's right. Looks like he's just going to be going for the trap here.
Yep, pops a trap. Deck counts are looking at 5 for Achilles now, 7 for Muldoon. We're coming down to the wire here, and so far, unless Achilles can get in, it seems like Muldoon is going to be able to block off here. Definitely, no one's out yet.
The interesting thing is there's one more Hermes, and that could make all the difference, because if Muldoon sends out a worker to attack Achilles, Achilles defends with a Hermes, gets through the worker right up next to Muldoon, then even if it's a rending shot and can push Achilles away, Achilles will guaranteed have a clear path, to Muldoon with a simple 1 boost. So we're getting to the spot where even Muldoon attacking into Achilles is dangerous for him, not just because of the Hermes, but also the battle hardened that I mentioned previously.
Yeah, Wily on defense as well could throw things off if a worker is forced to go adjacent.
Oh yes, that's great positioning too right now for Achilles in terms of Wily fighting. I like Kjet just taking a defensive stance and double maneuvering there. Like I said, I think attacking Achilles is somewhat of a liability at this point. If it's not first action, that is. If you can attack first action, you're always safe because you can maneuver away afterwards.
Yeah. Likely going to see an attack into the worker here.
Got to imagine Worker's going to take it. Achilles is going to draw another card, putting himself down to 3. Kjet probably has the call for backup on his next turn to avoid an overdraw with his simple call for backup into a maneuver to reset up his bunker. I think Muldoon's just going straight defense the rest of the game and will likely gas Achilles out, but it is quite close. If Kjet makes any mistakes, and his timer is getting pretty low, we see it ticking down quick after it gets under a minute there, so if the timer comes into play and forces Kjet to make a rash decision, that could actually swing the game in a tense spot like this.
For sure. NinjaSegun keeping Kjet on his toes. Really one wrong move and it could all go downhill.
Another play that Muldoon has here, if he doesn't have to call for backup, is to put a trap where the worker is that Achilles is likely killing here, and then go back to that position we saw before where the worker goes in that spot right above the tri-zone to block him off that way, and then Achilles can't really reach Muldoon there either.
Yep. And after
That isn't,
placing,
isn't something that lets Achilles move into that spot, because that would stop that and basically force a call for backup to be able to be safe.
wow, we
They
see
went
just
for the
think
battle
about-
hardened stop, I like
Unfortunately
the
wasted.
attempt, but
Yeah,
does not work out here for.
definitely aware of the situation, but that is the last Brothers in Arms, leaving just the skirmish to be the final 6 without any, excluding any battle-hardened recursion. So Achilles, getting rid of those workers, is starting to reach a threshold where he might want to choose what he's attacking with wisely. Not exactly yet, because he's still got 2 tests for weaknesses, and Muldoon has, like, always 2% defense. So it's going to be interesting to see what Achilles has left to attack with, because I do see a world where he runs out. It's unlikely. It's probably just going to be Muldoon walling up and getting ready to outlast Achilles that route, but there's a world.
Do
Do you
an
see
attack here.
attack from either Worker or Muldoon into Achilles? I would guess Muldoon.
I would too. I like not putting the trap down if the plan was, or like, because I did note the thing earlier, but if you're attacking here with a rending, all right. I like the heal, because if it was Muldoon attacking, then, you know, a shooter gives him an extra action, which is actually favorable for you
Yeah,
at
good
this
for you at
moment.
this point.
Yeah, forcing Muldoon to have, oh, and he's got the call for backup. All right.
Brutal.
Massive,
Just put the
massive,
stuff
massive.
back down.
Interestingly enough, if he didn't have the call for backup, he could have done the position he did last time, and Achilles would just not be able to reach, not even the Worker, without boosting.
Yeah, the rending shot was a really nice play.
For sure. You see the backup happening, just bringing back Workers, not doing any traps, not drawing 2 cards. And Muldoon walling up. Let's see if Achilles can find a way to pierce through, or will Muldoon be able to seal this up?
Well, Achilles is drawing 2 cards guaranteed per turn here because he has no passes, and you either double maneuver or you kill off a worker. So Achilles only has, I mean, he's going to go down to 0 cards in deck at the end of this turn. He's going to have to draw 2 cards the next turn. I don't see him closing this out anymore. I think Kjet has it locked down. With 5 cards in deck, he can just double maneuver and make sure Achilles can't reach him.
Yeah, we could see him opt for a feint here, because Achilles is running out of time. So if you stop the battle hardened, you stop any like sneaky stuff he can do, getting back spear throw, for instance, as a pass, plus 2 damage into you. But he could also just let it go through. Even if he gets something back with battle hardened, I still don't know if he has the time to finish out. Because if it's not battle hardened, then you're gonna regret feinting. And it wasn't. That's the last 6.
That's the last 6.
Does get to center, but still 2 workers to block off in the corridor.
Still 2 workers to block off, and also feint feels pretty okay now for Muldoon, so it's kind of good that he held on to it, because
because now he can do it without like, now if battle hardened isn't attacked with, there just isn't time anyway.
You can
So I
attack
think
with the
feint
feint
is
now. Because you guarantee to do 2
Yeah,
damage.
You could even do that too. Yeah.
Because Achilles he's definitely defending with the battle hardened to try and get the spear throw back. Or maybe even a helm. Like, Ninja's last Hail Mary might be trying to just land a undefended double attack that Kjet has 0 defense for. But if Kjet has 0 defense, he doesn't attack and risk that. He just double maneuvers like he did. He walls up. Achilles can't possibly reach.
Just seeing the hand here, since all the knowledge is known, player can request to see their opponent's hand.
Yep. We'll see if Muldoon elects to attack with Achilles' test for weakness here.
Would be something. Yeah, so we see 2 tests for weakness, a feint, a battle hardened, a Hermes, a wily fighting, and a heal left for Achilles.
You
Achilles
mentioned how
attacking into the worker.
the opponent can request to see the opponent's hand, and the reason why that doesn't matter for anyone who may be confused about that. Once you get to the end of the deck, all decks are public knowledge, So you could just look at a deck list, and every card has a quantity listed in the bottom right corner. And so you know the deck composition of the decks. And so once you get down to no cards in deck, you look at everything in the discard pile, and you can deduce what is in the opponent's hand. So rather than making the opponent waste the time to try to, figure out what is in the hand, we just make it easier and say, okay, well, you can just see what's in the hand.
Now we're going to see the trap that I mentioned last time. Now this is going to allow him to prevent Achilles from reaching once more, as long as he maneuvers, puts that worker in the tan spot right above the tri-zone. I'm pretty sure he can force it, so there's no way to get in.
I think every time you attack with a shooter first, just to deal the 1 damage guaranteed, because once you put Achilles from 5 to 4, you've changed the fatigue math, and now there's only 2 more interactions or 1 more interaction before you'll die to a maneuver rather than 2. And Achilles needs 2 interactions to win this, so.
Yeah, and I guess Achilles can't Hermes into the trap, because then he's just at 2 health, he maneuvers and dies, so yeah.
Yep, there's the confirmed 1 damage. Takes away a whole action from Ninja. Now it'll be a spear throw and a maneuver, or a maneuver and an attack, and then it'll be game over on the next turn.
I think very well played by Ninja, definitely taking I think the best strat he had at the start. Oh, we're just going to attack again. I feel like at this point, yeah, it makes sense. You basically just force Achilles. Actually, if this is
if it's a feint,
they should all be destroyed.
Oh.
It's just
guaranteed,
right? Rending also is pretty good here.
Rending was guaranteed if no feint, I guess.
Yeah, because he has no feints left. Yeah.
It's 2 damage from being forced to draw off the Achilles ability, since Achilles won the combat with the Hermes. Hermes moves into the trap, pops the trap, takes an additional damage. But then, of course, Achilles has to take a maneuver in fatigue, and he will end at -1.
Yep.
And that is game 1.
Doing everything he could to try and get there as Achilles, and you can sometimes feel like he got a shot, but this matchup is just so rough for him. But well played by Ninja to give himself the best odds.
Yeah, very well played. I think there were definitely moments during that game where it seemed like it could have gone either way, which was really exciting. And although the 12% stats say that Muldoon is almost always going to win this matchup, it is just fun to see a glimmer of hope, like, oh, this might be the time where we see that 12% happen. And this game definitely was looking like it at times. So very fun game to watch. In terms of Muldoon Achilles matchups, I think that one was pretty fun to watch. So I'm pretty happy with that. And I mean, Ninja had to expect that outcome, right? He knows the stats, he knows the matchup spreads. He's a good player, and he expects that. So now, if you're Ninja, you just gotta shrug off the loss. You kind of expected it. You just get back in the zone. You gotta focus on the next game, because it all is gonna come down to this. Because you got to assume that Achilles is going to be taking map here against Yananga, and you just got to be locked in for that game, because this is all that matters. That last game doesn't matter anymore, right? You just got to look to the future if you're going to win this match. So I think really well played, though, on both ends.
Yeah, I think NinjaSegun might have just been playing for Game 3. I've seen some drafts in BanQuest in general where you're like, okay, I know the first game's going to be rough, but once they're gone, they're out, and that's the thing about BanQuest is, like, Muldoon was played, but now Muldoon's done for the rest of the set. Now it's just Yananga. And I don't know if you've heard, John, but apparently Yananga sucks. So it's going to be pretty easy to deal with here with the last 2 games.
I have some words to say about that one. You mentioned Big 3 before, and you said Electra, Sherlock, and Strange. And I said, well, debatable, because we all know, come on, let's be real, Yananga's in that 3rd spot for the Big 3. So.
Well, no, Yananga's bottom 3.
Nah.
That's like the clear consensus.
Right. She's been banished to the Shadow Realm of the Buffy tier. Oh, man. But yeah, honestly, I'm really surprised about the Yananga stats throughout this tournament, because she was regarded as such a high tier fighter, and I still believe she's just the big one. She's just the best fighter in the game. Although she doesn't win by a large margin on a lot of matchups, I think her matchup spread is better than anybody's. So if you can play her really well and just outskill your opponents, you're going to go far. And yeah, so I'm just really surprised that she's fallen from grace so hard. Her stats, I believe this tourney are sub 50%, which is just insane to me. I mean, how the mighty have fallen.
The massive factor is that fighters like Yen and fighters like Muldoon too, that kind of have a lot of positioning stuff going on, tend to be really difficult for a lot of players. And it's not me belittling the playability of certain players, it's more so that they're just hard in general. They're tough to like master, and it takes a lot of grinding and a lot of practice. And our top 4 players here, I'm sure that they have like day and night just grinded out these games and gotten ready for this set. And that is when you start to see those fighters shine. For example, Kjet taking Muldoon here and showing us master positioning with the traps and setting up spots in Point Pleasant that you didn't think would be corridors that can be corridors. And just in general, I think that overall positioning is the thing that is like one of the toughest things to do in the game. And once you master that, you start to see how good of a player you can be and how much you can shine.
Yeah, for sure. Because one spot, one space can make all the difference in a game. So it's really crazy how much positioning impacts everything. And you make a good point about these players being able to really showcase their sneaky comfort picks, you know, because Muldoon, not often considered super high tier, but man, when you see somebody like Kjet playing Muldoon, you're like, wow, that fighter's pretty dang good.
Here's the thing. You always see Muldoon in finals weekend. Every time. I think that's pretty telling of his playability and his skill.
I think you're just about right. I mean, most finals do end up with InGen. At least in the grand finals, I think InGen is always around, because when we expand to best of 5, you need so many more fighters in the whole pool, you know, that Muldoon always sneaks his way in, man. He's just really good. So not surprised to see Kjet get the win there, but now we're moving on to Yananga. So we need to wait and see who Ninja is going to choose. Is it going to be the Achilles or the Luke? And I've already said my prediction, I think, is Achilles, because I think you want Map as Achilles into Yananga. But do either of you see any merit in picking Luke here? Because I know Luke also likes Map against Yen.
No, but he doesn't need it as much. I definitely think that you're in a bad spot either way, but if you don't go Achilles here, you can't give Yananga Map against Achilles. Like, everything I said earlier about it being a fun and close matchup goes away when Yen gets Map picked, because there's not enough maps that you can ban from the Achilles side, even with 3 bans, to not give Yen a really, really bad map for you. And so, yeah, it's a thing where Luke, I think, like I said, even though I think that Yen has a bit of an advantage there, I don't think Luke cares about it quite as much. Now, it's still going to give Yen the edge in that one if we do see a game 3, but I don't think you can pick a map that's quite as bad for Luke as you would be able to do into Achilles. So that's my estimation, is I think you pretty much have to go Achilles here to give yourself a shot at making that game 3 happen. I
would agree with that. And on the topic of maps, do you think we're going to see similar map bans? Because it looks to me like the Achilles into Yen is very similar thought process as to the Achilles versus InGen, where you just need to get in, you know, and land those hits. So do you think we'll see similar map bans as before?
So I think that we're going to see a slight difference, because I think one of the maps that you're going to switch up banning, because before it was Raptor Paddock, Sanctum, and Globe Theater, right? Mm-hmm. I think we're going to see Hero Rot replace one of those, because that is not only a really good Achilles map, but it's one of Yen's worst, if not her worst map. And so I really don't think you can give that option to Achilles. And honestly, if I had to choose one of those to replace, I think I would replace Raptor Paddock, because I've actually played that one multiple times from the Yananga side on against Achilles on Paddock, and while I definitely think it gives him a better shot, I don't think Yen hates it as much. Now, you could also replace Globe Theater. It's kind of just preference, because they're both quite good. But I would probably lean a little bit more towards letting Raptor Paddock through, banning out Sanctum and Globe in addition to the Herod.
I think I would agree with that because, like you said, Herod is one of Yen's worst maps for sure. So I definitely like the idea of switching that out. Now, whether or not Kjet knows that, I'm not sure because I don't know if that's necessarily widespread knowledge. I know Yananga players definitely know about Herod, but I'm not sure about the community as a whole. Although Kjet is no stranger to the top 4. We've seen him in the finals weekend in the past. And I believe that was that against Ito? It was Ito and Animal and Chad and Kjet, I believe.
I think so, yes.
I believe it was up against Ito in the last semis. And Kjet got knocked out there, and Ito went on to the finals to face a little expressionless Animal. So shout out to him. He's one of our past champions. But Kjet has been here before. So if you're Kjet, you've been here in the situation before. Last time you lost. Now you're in the same situation, except you're up a game in game 1, you know, going into game 2. So you're right on the verge of your best tourney performance yet. And you just need to win one more game. Just get a win with Yananga, the best fighter in the game you have under your belt. So you're all set, primed and ready. You just got to beat either Achilles or Luke, right? And so what do you think Kjet's mindset is, Angel, going into this game? Do you think he's feeling really confident because he's so close and he's set up so well to win just one more game? Or do you think the pressure is going to start sinking in and being like, oh, I'm so close, like I can feel it? And do you think that's going to cause him to slip?
I actually disagree with both of the points you made. I do think he's really stressed, but I think that Kjet has enough composure and skill level to be like, hey, I'm in the lead right now. I just need to relax, and I can keep going forward. I got Yananga, the best character in the game, and she's going into some pretty decent matchups that she doesn't mind. There's no Sinbads here. I don't have to flinch or cry. So as long as I just stay focused, I can maybe take this 2-0. That being said, though, there is definitely pressure within the moment. I don't doubt that. I wouldn't be surprised if Kjet, no matter how this set goes, will tell us, like, yeah, this second game, this moment right now was extremely stressful for him.
Yeah. But you make a good point, you know, no toils, no dangers on the other side, no jump scares.
Nor troubles.
Nothing to worry about for Yen. But, you know, from what I know of Kjet, and I actually got to meet him in person in Coblin Frogs, that was really cool. And I've talked to him online a handful of times, and he seems like a pretty chill guy. So I think he's good at handling high-stress situations. And I don't know Ninja personally. I've just interacted with him a little bit here and there online, but pretty minimal amount. But he looks to be pretty young, and I wonder if age plays a factor in this, because maybe if you're younger and you haven't been put in these situations before, you know, the nerves might get to you a little bit more. But I think we're going to see he's just got to lock in and overcome any nerves that there might be, overcome any matchup stats that he might see on UM League, because they're just stats. They don't matter, right? They don't tell the whole story. You can always be on the flip side of the stats. And I think we've all been there. We've all been there, right? I lost as Achilles into Sun Wukong against Taylor in a top 16 before. I mean, so yeah, we've all been there, and it doesn't matter what the stats say. You just got to lock in, you got to focus, you got to win each game one at a time. Just focus on one game. So
Yananga has beaten Sinbad before.
I've done it personally. It's not often, not easy, but yeah, it happens. So We'll see. But the next matchup is going to be Yen versus Achilles. So it is a match of the Battle of Legends Volume 2 fighters. So that's really cool. We get to see an in-box matchup. This one's an absolute classic. Like Zach said, one of the most played matchups, I think, in all of Unmatched. So really cool. I'm excited to see this one. But let's go ahead and take a look at the decks and see what we got coming up with Yananga into Achilles. And I'll take this one with Yananga. I'm somewhat of a Yananga player myself. So Yananga is all about versatility. Her whole deck composure is very purple oriented, so she can attack or defend with pretty much anything at any point. some of the key cards, you have Rain of Arrows, which is a famous double attack or bonus attack. It's just a simple 3, but if they don't cancel it after combat, you're going to get another 3. So throwing 2 3s in a single card is pretty good, especially if they eat up 2 defenses of the opponent, or if they end up taking undefended, you could land 3 damage there. So it's kind of like a 6 in that regard. Then you have Surprise Volley, which is immediately you can either return a defeated archer to a space in the opposing fighter's zone, and that archer becomes the attacker, and if you don't, you gain an action. And Surprise Volley is insane because it just gives you more archers, and as we know from Yanenga's ability, her archers translate to extra health for her, because if she's in the same zone with her archers, she can divvy up the damage dealt to her and pass it off to the archers instead. And all the archers are a little bit unique because even though they're token sidekicks, they have 2 health instead of 1. So you can often just give them a single point of damage, keep them around on the board just for map control and body blocking and whatnot, and to be able to use their combat cards, but you still negated 1 point of damage that Yanenga would have taken in that case. And then if you look down below with 1 with the land, you get to move each of your fighters up to 2, and each fighter recovers 1 health, and you draw a card. Now, it seems like a simple maneuver with a 1 point of healing, but it can often be much more than that, because if you've dealt damage to your archers split up, it can be an upwards of 3 healing, which is massive from 1 card. So 1 with the land is crucial there, and how you divvy up your damage is really going to depend on whether or not you have the 1 with the land and what you're intending to do with your archers. Master of the Hunt is the other scheme in the deck, gains you 2 actions. Very simple, but very effective. So if you need to go for a combo turn, you can maneuver into their zone and play Master of the Hunt to reset your turn, essentially, and then you have 2 actions left to make attacks on your opponent, which is huge. You can also use Master of the Hunt to kind of back off to safety, right? You could approach, you can Master of the Hunt, make an attack, and then back off if you need to. And we often, I think, see that in this Achilles matchup, because you kind of poke at him and then back off, because you don't want to end up in a situation where you're getting double attacked by Achilles, especially when he's angry. Now, the last card, Stallion Charge, is going to help against those double attack turns, so even if Achilles does some tricky defense and moves up adjacent to you as the last action, then you can defend with Stallion and move Yanenga up to 5 spaces through opposing fighters, dealing a damage to each of them in the process and getting far away from Achilles. The only trouble is if you defend a Stallion against Angry Achilles, you're either going to take 3 damage because it was a 6, or it was a double attack. You're going to win against the double, but then you have a 5 coming at you after the fact, and it didn't really help you get away all too much. Although that can trigger some defensive momentous shifts for 5 values, which is a perfect defensive lineup into the double attack. And there's a lot of interesting little interactions in this matchup, like the Rain of Arrows going into a under Achilles Helm, which is really brutal because then Pat can swap in and take the 3 undefended. So a lot of really interesting key interactions to look out for. But let's jump on over to the Achilles deck, and we can take a look at some of these cards again and maybe talk about them in the context of this particular matchup. So, Zach, do you want to talk a little bit about Achilles this time and what maybe key interactions we're looking for here?
Sure. So as we saw last game, Achilles has Pat as a sidekick, and when Pat dies, you discard 2 random cards from your hand, and for the rest of the game, all of your attacks get +2, and you draw a card whenever you win combat, and that draw happens on either offense or defense. Now, a big difference between this game and last game is Yanenga does not have any cancels. So not having any cancels in her deck means that your Pat cards, Battle Frenzy, and Day of Your Doom are going to be guaranteed to deal damage to Pat if you so choose. Obviously with Battle Frenzy, it's not optional, so if you attack with it, it's going to be happening. But then with Day of Your Doom, you can optionally take 2 damage to buff up its value to a 5. In my experience, Achilles basically wants Pat to die as quickly as possible in this matchup, and because Yanenga doesn't have ways to stop the self-damage from Pat, we're definitely going to probably see Achilles try to get those out early and often, because once Pat goes down, you can just keep attacking Yanenga, and even though she has archers to help, as well as her value blocks that can get pretty big, whether it just be Skirmish, which is a solid block, or Jaws, which can get up to a 5 or a 6 depending on positioning. She eventually just folds to your pressure, because in addition to having big values that you're throwing at her, you're going to be drawing whenever you win combat, and Yanenga does not have any draw in her deck from card effects and whatnot, so the only way she can draw is by maneuvering. And if you can just keep her in that state, she's eventually going to run out of those good blocks, and you can get damage through, since she can't really do anything about it. And conversely, because of that, Yanenga is going to be trying to keep Pat alive for a good bit, because if Achilles gets enraged closer to the mid to late game, she has enough to survive, especially if she hasn't used her bigger blocks by that point and has utilized her archers quite well. So under Achilles' helm is something that Yanenga is going to have to keep in mind. Fortunately, because a lot of Yanenga's attacks are 3 values, if Pat does swap in, he's probably only taking 1 damage most of the time. It does mean that you're going to have to be careful about things like point blank and whatnot on offense, because if Pat swaps in, he's going to be taking more. And again, you don't want him to die if you can avoid it early on. The other thing we're going to look at is spear throw. Most of the time you're going to see that go into archers if they're alive, just because it cleanly kills the 2 HP archer. And if you throw it into Yanenga when she has archers in her zone, she can put the damage, or at least some or all of the damage, on her archers, and then perhaps get value out of one with the land healing. So spear throw, a very clean answer to archers. You don't have to worry about combat and either attacking for high enough or them getting some of their effects off on defense, such as pin the prey. Even if the archer goes down, it could still be quite annoying. Battle hardened, similarly, a good attack into archers, because if they don't block, then it just takes them out. If they do block, then at least you get something back. And if you already have a battle hardened in discard pile, then it's going to be able to get back the other copy. And because Yanenga doesn't have a cancel, unlike InGen, who tried to stop the battle hardened recurring stuff with Feint last game, Yanenga can't do that. So you can loop it on offense if you want, especially when Achilles is angry. A 4 continually on offense can be nice if you don't have better options. And on defense, it's even better, because again, most of Yanenga's attacks are 3s, so you're only taking 1 damage. It's quite good into the double attack in particular, because you take 1 damage from the first half, 1 damage from the second half. And if you're angry Achilles, then you're not drawing from that, which sometimes you do want to have the option to not draw on defense, because you'd rather take a little bit of chip damage instead. So that's kind of what we're going to be looking for Achilles. He's going to be wanting to aggressively kill off Pat, most likely here, which is converse to the strategy taken last time, whereas Yanenga is going to want Pat to stay alive for as long as possible, until she can either get a good opportunity to kill Pat when Achilles is low on hand and combo him with some of her action gain effects, or just wait until the later game to kill Pat off and survive angry Achilles long enough to exhaust him out.
All right, well, let's take a look. We do have the map pick, and Zach, it turns out you were right on the dot with Globe, Heorot, and Sanctum being banned. So the same 3 as last time, except Heorot was added to the bans, which left open Raptor Paddock, and Raptor Paddock is going to be the one that ends up being played. So, Angel, do you want to give us a rundown on Raptor Paddock and what's so special about this map?
Yeah, so one of the key features about Raptor Paddock is right there, dead in center, you see that there is these funny little orange arrows that look different from the regular paths. These are one-way paths, which mean that the direction that it's pointing is the only way that you can go, and you can't go backwards. So that's going to be very important for, I think, Achilles here. If Achilles can get Yanenga into what is called the pit, maybe keep her trapped there for a bit, you get some pretty massive damage onto her. Albeit, Yanenga does have a lot of ways to get out of there with cards like Stallion Charge and Skirmish, but it's definitely something to keep in mind, because it's going to be very scary if Yanenga gets stuck in that type of situation. A couple other key factors about Raptor Paddock that I like to point out and consider in general when I'm playing on Raptor Paddock is the top left area is a 3-space zone that's kind of in that kind of cream-colored zone. It can force adjacency very often, so if Achilles ever needs to back off, which is probably unlikely, but just in case, he can try to go there to force Yanenga to at least be adjacent to him when attacking. A couple other key factors would be the 2 tri-zones. Specifically, tri-zone on the left covers a lot of ground. I could definitely see Yanenga towering up over there and taking some shots at Achilles or Pat from that distance. And of course, the final thing I'd like to point out is the fact that the player 1 and player 2 spots pretty close to each other, depending on how the archer's position. Could even get a turn 1 attack from Pat, depending on how Pat positions here and what he boosts with.
Zach, I know you mentioned Jaws of the Beast. What do you think about Jaws on a map like this?
So I definitely think that it's going to be difficult to actually get the best value Jaws. One of the things that can be nice at times with that is if there's spots on the map that let you basically force your opponent to give you at least a 5 value Jaws, because Jaws is always going to be a 4, assuming it doesn't get canceled. But you know, if it's getting feinted, for example, on offense, that's not really going to get anything through. I suppose Angry Achilles could get 1 damage through, but he's probably got better things to do than that. And so looking at this map and how it's laid out, there aren't any spots that Yenenga can stand if she doesn't have archers to help, where she can force the opponent to give a better spot. So for example, one of the things we can look at here is to the left of the second player starting spot, that solo brown zone. If you had an archer in the white solo white up to the top left of that space, then it would force your opponent to give you at least a 5 value Jaws if they go for Yenenga instead of an archer. But outside of that, there's a couple other spots that are similar to that, but there's nowhere where you can stand that gives a guarantee unless you have archers helping out. So I think that Jaws will, most of the time, Achilles can probably expect it to be a 4, unless Yenenga gets those good positioning spots with archers still alive.
All right, very good. Well, we are just about ready, so we're going to jump on over to Vorpal, and we'll see what happens between Yenenga and Achilles.
Alrighty, NinjaSegun getting the Star Sunglass buff. We'll see if that allows Achilles here to pull out the match. Both players setting up here. Yenenga's going to be taking first. Pat is in an interesting position. I don't often see sidekicks placed on the other side of the paddock.
Yeah, that is an interesting starting position for Pat. I wonder what the reasoning is there.
If I had to guess, it kind of helps you circle around Yenenga. No matter where she blocks off, there's always an option.
Yeah, it gives you some better positioning options. And one of the things that you can do with Pat when you know your opponent doesn't want him to die is just position him very aggressively. You can put him in range to be double attacked. You can put him right next to opposing fighters. Like, you can just get him up in people's faces and put them into difficult spots because they don't want to attack him like they would a normal sidekick. And so I'm not too surprised to see Pat kind of where he is, just because it gives him a bit more spread. Like, Yenenga kind of has to back off to this corner that she's in if she wants to prevent, particularly Pat from reaching. And given the zone layout, I mean, we could have seen Pat maybe go on the right most gray there next to where one of the archers is standing, but that would allow the archer to kind of block him off a little bit better. So we might see Pat just go up to the top of the paddock here, and that's a pretty good center spot where he is right now. I don't think it's quite one of the move 4 centers, but if it's not far off.
Yeah, I would love here to see Achilles throw something like a Brothers in Arms, because I think you want to just make sure the archers die off before Pat does, at least the initial 2. I think that's Achilles' goal, and then you're happy with Pat to go. But if Pat goes too early, then Yenenga just has too many body blocks for solo Achilles. So I like this play by Ninja, just being aggressive right off the bat, taking a maneuver into an attack. Kjet knowing exactly what the plan is and countering perfectly with the skirmish.
Yep. Brothers in Arms not going up into a 6, obviously, because Pat is already defeated, or not defeated. But very solid skirmish coming from Yanenga here, forcing Achilles to take that second maneuver action.
And we see the implication of the pit here, so Achilles without boosting cannot get out of range of those archers unless he wants to stay in the pit, but that's pretty risky to be pinned in like that. So I like the position by Ninja here, but it does give Kjet a good opportunity for some counterattacks if he so pleases.
Yep. The interesting thing about the pit is that both fighters have ways to move through opposing fighters. Yanenga with Stallion Charge and Achilles with Hermes. But outside of Hermes, Achilles doesn't have anything that would let him move through opposing fighters, so he'd have to like either win with a skirmish and push the archer away, which would be possible as long as the archer was not attacking with a online momentous shift, which if the archer is blocking off the pit, he's not going to have an online one. But then the other thing to note too is that it becomes a little annoying to clear the archer, especially if Yanenga does not stand in the zone, because you can't spear throw, because the brown and blue are not same zone there, even though they're right adjacent to each other. So you would have to attack through, and Achilles doesn't have the best attacks while Pat's alive, so.
Wow, that was a big win for Kjet. He was threatening, after moving, he was threatening a momentous shift, he was threatening a potential double attack. Ends up being just a Stallion Charge that goes into the helm, which is probably best case scenario.
Yeah, because not only do you get just 1 damage on Pat, but also you get to run through Achilles here if you'd like. Unfortunately for Yen, it would end her adjacent, but I'm assuming that Kjet did this bearing in mind that he has enough defense to be able to last a potential double attack from Achilles.
Yeah, you also have hand
if you're being
advantage.
attacked by Achilles, Pat's not dying, so you also don't mind as much.
On top of that, you might just have another Stallion to like run him over again and also go back to your spot.
I think Ninja
I
just wants to maneuver
see-
Pat up and
Yeah,
attack.
Pat kill an archer maybe, or actually go for Yen at this point because she can't push the damage off. But taking out archers is also important, so it's a little bit of a difficult choice because you could get some solid damage on Yen. But I think clearing the archers, to your point earlier, John, is I think a little bit better of a play. Because if you attack with a Battle Frenzy, it's a guaranteed kill on the archer. The archer could still block with maybe something like a Pin the Prey just to force you to discard a card and maybe push you away so you don't have as good of a positioning for the following turn.
Yep.
But it would also allow Yen to not overdraw if she double maneuvers next turn. So I could
Right.
see something like that, but either way, the archer's dead, and that's what you want. So I could see no block here. If you don't have something like a pin, could see a pin if it's available. Yep.
I like the consideration here from Ninja between the solo yellow space and then the tri-zone space right above it. Typically, you know, you want to avoid tri-zone spaces against Yanenga because you don't want to give her offensive 6-value jaws, but he was debating like, well, maybe I don't care about that because it is Pat, and I do want Pat to die off anyways.
Yeah,
So,
it's like, what,
yep.
you can attack Pat with
Yeah.
the
Which, speaking
jaw?
of,
Like, no.
dealing the Day of Your Doom damage to himself, despite already taking him out with the base, showing that he wants Pat down as soon as possible, which
Yep.
is a very cool flip from our last game.
Yeah, just like
Yeah.
we saw last game. Similarly, anyways, I mean, it played out different, but yeah, you're just signaling to your opponent what your intentions are right off the bat. But I think in this matchup, even in the other one as well, there's really no surprise, but sometimes that can catch your opponent off guard.
For sure. You see Yanenga going into attack with Achilles.
Do we have another helm?
Helm would be pretty big here.
Yeah, because you got point blank online, right? You got shift online, you got the double attack online. Although I wouldn't be surprised from Kjet's perspective if this is just a surprise volley to revive that archer that just got killed off.
True.
Would mean that the archer would have to go adjacent to Achilles here.
Oh, just another stallion. You know what? Although I do like these bait attacks, I don't know how I would feel if I was Kjet. With both Stallion Charge, I mean, 2 out of 3, right? 2 out of 3 Stallions being gone already is not the greatest because Stallion Charge is so good once Achilles is angry because you're able to attack him and likely get away. because you don't want to be anywhere near angry Achilles, obviously. So if you can attack him, and if he defends big with something like a Skirmish or a Hermes or Wily, most of his defenses, right, you're just going to make him draw a card and still get away. And that's really good interaction for you. So having the Stallions for when Achilles is angry is pretty important for offense. And we've already seen 2 of them used up in the early game here. So we'll see if that ends up making a difference later on in the game.
There's some brief technical difficulties there, but we're all back and good to go. They're just redoing the previous combat between Stallion and Hermes and resolving that.
An interesting thing to note is that we're seeing we've seen 3 of the cards that can get Yen out of potential pit problems, and so she's gonna have to be particularly careful from this point forward to not give Achilles the opportunity to push her into the pit with something like Skirmish, because if she does, she's quickly running out of ways to escape that terrible
And
spot.
a funny thing we could have seen here, playing off of that, is Achilles could have chosen to go into the pit, and if Yanenga wanted to deal a damage to him, she would have also ended in the pit in that front brown space, and then Pat and Achilles could have pinned Yanenga in the pit.
Yeah.
But we see Ninja not electing for that play. And even if he did choose to go in the pit, I mean, Kjet didn't, he wasn't forced to follow into the pit, but it would have been interesting to see what would have happened.
See Achilles start with an attack here, potentially Pat.
Yep.
We do see it is Pat into the Archer. Another
Down
Dave
to
Redoom
1 if
going
he wants
off.
to be.
Are you going to put Pat down to 1?
It's basically it's like deciding whether you want to try and get both of the battle frenzies off or not, or get value from another helm at some point. Because for instance, while helm is not great into a lot of Yen stuff because it's only going to be you're only going to be taking 1 like we saw earlier with the Stallion. If you get it into a double attack, not only can you eat more damage, but you know, if Pat is at 1 and he dies, then the second part doesn't go through. Either way, the second or the 2 attacks are not going into Achilles, which is the important part. So we do see deciding to keep the health here, wants to get a little bit more value out of Pat at this stage, which is I think fair. You've got plenty of time to kill him off, and if you have at least 1 of those cards mentioned in hand already, then you're feeling good. And I would not be surprised if he has 2, like maybe he has a helm and a battle frenzy, and is like, well, if I already have both these cards, I can get guaranteed value out of both if I don't take the damage on Pat here.
Yep. And because of the nature of this map layout with the zones, ooh, great feint. Real quick, we're going to see Ninja cancel one of the surprise volleys, so no Archer revive for Kjet, so that was really good for Ninja. But on this map, you have some pockets in the white and in the yellow where you can force adjacency. And so if you can force adjacency, then you can defend with a helm and guarantee that Pat will take at least 1 damage, right, from the helm defense. So you'll save Achilles damage, and anything Yen is attacking with is going to be dealing at least 1, if not more, to Pat, because she has no regroup baits. So a case where regroup would actually be very good, she doesn't have that option. Now the archers do, but until she can revive some of the archers with surprise volleys, she won't be able to use those. So a situation like this right here, if Yen goes to attack, Ninja defends with a helm, he gets value out of the helm, swaps in Pat, and then Pat takes at least 1 damage, and then you could throw your Pat attack, like the Battle Frenzy, to guarantee 2 damage on Yanenga, kill off Pat. That would be a great interaction. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see something like that. Also, you don't need the helms in this matchup because you don't need that big 4 boost because it's such a tight map.
These are some great feints coming out from Achilles. Canceling the Rain of Arrows, canceling the surprise volley, less archers, less attacks, less damage he has to deal with. But down to 1 feint, which is definitely worth noting.
Yeah, Achilles can have up to 2 more because of Battle Hardened, so that's something to note. Even if he goes for a Battle Hardened loop later, he can still have 4 feints, getting back 1 with the first Battle Hardened. And feint's a pretty good defense against Yanenga, gotta say.
I like this positioning from Shogun because even if you go for Achilles, you have to either be adjacent to Pat or be in the pit.
Yeah, it is interesting positioning. Another cool option he could have done if he knew he was going to double maneuver is he could have put Pat down in that blue space right above Yanenga, and you could have put Achilles into the pit on purpose into the brown, and Yanenga would have to boost in order to attack Achilles himself. Otherwise, you just take the attack on Pat, but then since Pat was guarding the entrance to the pit, Achilles could have gotten out. So that would have been interesting to see, but this is another good position because you set up Pat to be adjacent to Yen, ready for an attack if she chooses to go after Achilles. This is a big turn, I think, for Kjet. Okay, and he's gonna just elect to double maneuver and overdraw. Force the initiative on Achilles, saying, I know how the long game is going to play out. You're going to fatigue before I am. You're going to want to get your ability online and start hitting big. So I can afford to overdraw here and force you to be the one to approach and boost and waste cards, where I can just sit back and afford to discard them.
I could also see him going for maybe this little corridor in the gray, basically saying, hey, come pin me, because then Yen can do something that I find can definitely take the Achilles player off guard in this matchup and kill Pat and go for a big combo turn when maybe they're not expecting it, especially if you defend, like, you know, if Pat goes in here and you defend with something like a shield formation, Achilles needs to, well, doesn't need to, but really wants to discard a card to stop that Archer revive. And then you can go, but we're actually going to not see Pat go in at all here, just try to force Yen to waste more value overdrawing.
I'm honestly really confused on these last turns from both players. I'm surprised Kjet didn't move farther away to get out of single maneuver range, and I'm really surprised that Ninja is not choosing to just go in here.
I feel like even with the Brothers in Arms, it'd be pretty solid to just go in with.
And also
the Achilles heel discarded.
Very interesting. I was going to say Achilles not ending in the center of that little pocket, but that does mean that Yen has to boost. And heal isn't the best defense, so I guess both fighters can afford a little bit of overdraws, but it's more so not necessarily the value that you're losing as Achilles, but the time that you are losing, because you need as many interactions as you can get in order to knock Yen's health down to 0, because we all know how tanky Yanenga can be.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
And if you have a Battle Frenzy for Pat, I mean, it's a great time to throw it because Pat still lives at 1. Will eat up another card from your opponent attacking into Pat, or another Helm. I mean, a Helm here would be fantastic.
Okay, some damage to Achilles.
Wow.
Pat can go in and attack, but he's going to still have to maneuver. Good chip damage there into Achilles. Achilles is a third of his health gone already.
Yep, we see Pat going towards Yanenga. Out of zone, so kind of forcing adjacency here right now. Achilles could elect to step into the green to be nice and safe from Yen. But depending on what Achilles wants to do, could also just continue to go in if they're expecting Pat to go down soon here.
If we see a point blank into a battle frenzy, Pat would die.
Yep.
Achilles would go down to 4 cards after the discard, and Yen could maybe try to do something, but she's not that up on cards. I think you would want Achilles to be a little bit lower. And maybe one of the reasons why Ninja didn't go in last turn was to maybe just keep the hand advantage where he wanted it, but we'll see here.
See Pat attacking into Yen.
These next couple of turns, couple of interactions are going to be really, really big.
Yeah, agreed.
There we see the frenzy. Winning
Skirmish
against
the frenzy.
skirmish.
Pat into the pit.
Well,
Now
yeah,
Yen
that was
can go
really
for
good.
Achilles.
This does
Go
open
think
up,
about what you've done.
This does open up a single maneuver for Yen to get to Achilles. Although at a hand, well, we'll be at parity after a maneuver.
Maneuver, double master, take out Pat,
And
toss every double attack.
yeah.
It's funny that a Helm here puts Achilles in the pit where he can't really do much on his follow-up turn. So it gives him some time to draw, I suppose, to replace the cards he'd lose.
Now this is a great spot for Kjet to throw a double because you know that Achilles doesn't want to swap in with a helm right here because Pat is shoved all the way in the corner of the pit.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's
And we
exactly
see
what we see.
Skirmish
Just get a
getting
move.
first.
At a take turn.
Ooh, I really like that. I really like that play.
Yeah.
I think if you have the other Battle Frenzy, you probably just throw it here if you don't have like double Battle Hardened in hand. Because you're fine
Yeah.
losing one of them, but you don't want to cut
Shield
off the
formation
chain.
would be. Oh, okay. I was gonna say shield formation would be really annoying to that because then you'd have to lose all the cards in your hand. But we see the
Yes.
brothers instead. Do we see Pat die here?
No, hear me out. We might, because you take out Pat before the after combat check on brothers, which means Achilles won't be in the action.
That's crazy.
I do agree. That is
So
an insane
Achilles-
interaction.
Achilles maneuvers up to 2 cards, but that's it. Like, as long as you don't end adjacent to him, he's not going to attack you. And then he'd
Correct.
get 2 cards to your 4 going into your turn.
So you
Unless
go
he
adjacent to him.
Unless he boosts. Oh, man. Yeah, I think you do that. We'll see if Kjet sees
I think if
it.
Kjet sees that play, he does it for sure every time. That play is just ridiculously good. But
Yeah,
it is a very niche thing that you don't see often, and you might not even think about, right? You might think, oh, well, Achilles is going to gain the action, so he's going to have 2 actions and be angry.
We're seeing it.
Okay.
I would have
We are
honestly ended
seeing it.
adjacent, because Achilles definitely runs here.
I guess if he's got the double, he might throw it into you, but it is risky. But he has no control whether, like, even if he has the double in hand, he might just lose it here.
There's a chance he loses it, yeah.
Yeah, like, it's very likely. He's only keeping one of these cards.
This
Let's
is
see what it hits. This
huge.
could be very massive.
This is huge.
What do we hit? Well, oh my
Oh
goodness.
my gosh. A
Wow.
test
Really
and a
needed
brothers.
That's crazy damage.
Very
that he
fast.
lost.
Wow, that is brutal. He's got no more brothers at all. He's got 2 tests and 2 skirmishes, but wow, that is a lot of offense gone.
And here's another thing. There's going to be a lot of cards that Achilles is drawing into that he just doesn't want to use. Like a helm is just a blank 2 at this point to block with.
Now, Kjet does need to
Um,
take... Did he take his 1 damage from...
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
he was at 13.
Perfect.
So, unless Yen wants to boost, the only way she can attack Achilles here is if... okay, she's going to boost. I was going to say, the only way she can attack Achilles otherwise is going into the pit, which seems a bit dangerous when you've used all your stallions, so we're not going to see that.
For sure.
Oh my
heal.
god.
Going into a
Gets over the
shift.
heel. Really, the only thing Yen can get over the heel, unless Jaws is powered up, which it wouldn't be in this case.
That
Give me
was
Master of the Hunt right
huge.
now. This could be massive. Only 1 card left in hand for Achilles. 1 action left for Yanenga. Something like a Masters here would be big. Something like a surprise volley.
Double attack could be nasty.
Throw the double.
Rain of arrows for sure.
There's only 1 more feint. There's no way he's got it, right? What are the chances?
I feel like he would have blocked that one, unless he was. No, I think unless he was just hoping it wasn't the shift, because I guess the heel is fine into most things.
Yeah, and then you would have
It's a
drawn...
risky call though for
Yeah.
Kjet for what it's worth, because 1 wrong move and Achilles starts drawing cards, and then he's like, "Oh, nice job, Yanenga. You're at a low hand and you have bad draw. I'm gonna go in and smack you now."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, let's imagine that it was something small, right? And Ninja won that combat. The turn is over. Yen is in single maneuver range on a single zone space, so no huge jaws. Achilles is up to 3 cards in hand to Yen's 3 and starts smacking her around. But now, look at the difference. Ninja with 1 card in hand, Yanenga gets to back off. Like, that's just massive. So, I agree. Ninja throwing the heel was, I think, a good call. But Kjet just beating that out with the shift was a huge swing in tempo here.
Yeah,
For sure.
does get out of range, does get another card, so we'll still be up on Achilles even if he double maneuvers. The downside, of course, is that this was probably an opportunity to push some damage because Achilles likely doesn't have much for defense in hand. I wouldn't actually be surprised if there wasn't another defense in hand,
Yeah.
given the heel block. And so a little bit unfortunate that Yen can't potentially get some more damage through there, but ultimately, I think it ends up being fine here.
I do agree that it might be better to play a bit passive here. Yen is in the lead. You don't want to make a misplay and then accidentally lose that lead, because that could easily happen with Achilles. Again, 1 combat win and the whole thing starts shifting.
Yeah.
I like Achilles' positioning because even though he's at a lower hand than Yen, he's saying, hey, if you want to hit me, you got to be adjacent. So it's your call.
I think this is a perfect situation for Kjet to play the Master of the Hunt. Like I mentioned, you move in, you master, you make an attack, and then you back off. I mean, double maneuvering away is fine as well, but Achilles is going to be dealing much more damage per interaction than Yen. Although, I mean, there's not that many 6s left, so I don't know.
Yeah, we did lose a double and a brothers in arms when
That was huge.
when getting the pat death. So there's 2 skirmishes for 6s. We have Wily as well, which is what I like to refer to as an honorary 6 because it's a 5 that does 1 after combat. And honestly, it's just actually going to be a 6 here because Yen is out of Stallion, which is really the only way she can get out of that. And skirmish, would be a way to get out before Achilles is angry, but after skirmish wouldn't get you away. So we do still have, theoretically, like 3 6s. But Yen still has all of her jaws. Without archers, though, she's not going to be able to force a bigger jaws than the default 4, essentially, unless she can, maybe position in a way that forces Achilles into a bigger boost, and maybe he ends up running out of those boosts. But for now, he's still got 2 of the helms and 2 of the doubles if needed, so probably not a concern in the short term.
That being said, with less and less attacks for Achilles left, the shield formations are going to start being a little relevant here. Because you got to start discarding stuff, and you do have 1 Battle Frenzy left to discard, and you could discard a Helm, but that's a boost 4. And that's kind of how you're going to chase.
Not as required on this map, but yeah, you are running low on trash to throw away. Obviously, Battle Frenzy is fine, like that's your ideal one. But after that, it starts to get a little bit more iffy. And you see one with the land here just to not overdraw. It's basically a maneuver plus heal. You're not going to get value from archers probably getting healing off of it at this point, so makes sense.
Do you think if you're Achilles, you just go into the pit here and make an attack just to avoid a boost? But the problem is, I guess then you have to boost next turn unless you're double maneuvering.
Right. Because Yanenga would probably step away, maybe even hit you, because even if you block with skirmish, that's another 6 gone.
Is there 1 more Hermes left, or are those all gone?
They're both gone.
Okay, yeah, this is tough. It's tempting to just go right into the pit, but might make your next turn pretty awkward.
Yeah. We're going to see Battle Frenzy boost. So this being boosted with now means that there's not as much stuff to discard to shield formation. So that's going to start hurting, though. If you're getting a 6 into shield formation, you're at least happy there. Ooh!
Oh my gosh. This is brutal for Ninja.
Not what you love to see. All right, we see the helm discarded on the first half.
Wow.
No damage. So
coming in.
Usually the downside of that. Man, if we see another shield formation here...
And then
Dear
just a
Lord.
combo, it'll be game over.
Because if Achilles lets it through at that point, which he might have to, the archer could take 1 and still be alive. Oh my gosh.
Wow.
That is ideal.
Wow.
That's the biggest punish for the double attack right there.
Do you
Yeah,
ever
double shield
conserve your
formation.
cards and let the archer come back?
You might have to at this stage.
It depends
really
on what's
hard.
in hand, but
Yeah.
if you have something that you're considering, I don't think you can afford to.
I mean, that was
Yeah,
2 damage for 2 damage, so it makes sense.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're still
That-
getting 2
that goes
damage
even.
out of the spear throw there. Just it isn't great, of course.
But you're
Yeah, it's also
compressing.
not a pass anymore.
You're compressing your actions, which you might need to at this point. The pass, might be irrelevant. You might that might have actually worked out better for you, because it gives you another interaction without having to spend an action when your actions are limited before you
I
fatigue.
agree, yeah. I don't think Achilles is going to be exhausting here anyway, so it's just better to keep the archer out, because on top of that, if the archers do come back, they still have access to 1 pin the prey, I believe, which would be another discard.
This has got to be a point blank. It's a perfect opportunity, because if it's a battle hardened, you're still going to force Achilles to draw, still deal the damage. I mean, you got to start seeing those battle hardens really soon if you're Ninja. I think if you want to have a chance in this game,
Yeah.
you're quickly running out of value and time for interactions.
Yen also gets to maneuver after this and go to the spot 1 to the left of her, and then Achilles can't get around to the single spot behind her because it's way too far,
Yep.
even with a helm.
So then a
That would
5-value
force
Jaws.
at least a 5-value Jaws. You could start baiting with the last double attack potentially, but still it's rough. If you know what's kind of funny here, if he blocks with Skirmish, I think you guarantee push Yen into the pit if you want.
And then Yen
So
has
that
no way
could
out.
be-
There's no more stallions.
She would have to boost out, essentially. Yeah, we do see that. Oh, well, but the archer's going to be the one being pushed. Oh!
Oh no.
Surprise volley, because the archer becomes the attacker, so Yen cannot be pushed anymore with the skirmish effect.
That's rough. That's another
The
6
interactions
gone.
have been massive.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that's huge.
everything's been going Kiet's way pretty much.
Yeah, because now NinjaSegun is going to be drawing off of this. On top of that, another 6 gone, like you said. This brings us down to, is there 1 skirmish left?
Yes.
One skirmish,
One
one
dog.
double. That was rough.
Yeah. The other thing to note now is the archers, they're out of pin the praise, which those would be really good right now. Force Achilles to draw and discard a card. Like you're putting him deeper into exhaustion and forcing resources out of his hand. But the one with the divide and conquers could still be annoying to attack into Achilles, because even if you're in Yen's zone, either he takes 2 or he draws, which essentially is taking 2. So still an option. Okay, battle hardened into Jaws, not
Okay,
not
that's a good
that
one.
for Achilles here. Getting back the spear throw. Good way to take out the archer without having to go through Yen, which she's definitely going to try to block your way to that at this point. Would not be surprised to see that go into the archer next turn just to get it guaranteed gone without any extra value. So we'll see if the archer can get some value this turn. Still one more battle hardened left.
Now I know Yananga is my girl here, but I gotta be rooting here for Ninja. I want to see a game 3.
It's always fun. when we
Yeah,
have
for
to do
sure.
it.
Game
Always
threes are
want
the
for
best.
game 3. So come on, Achilles, pull this out. I mean, Yen is running a bit low on defenses, right? I mean, there's both skirmishes, all the stallions, all the shields, 2 out of 3
There's
shifts.
the divide, like I said.
So Yen
Yep.
has 1, 2, 3 defenses left. Is that it? You have a shift and 2 jaws, and
All
that's
the
it?
point blanks.
Oh, all the point
and
blanks. That's
Jaws.
right. Ooh, the point blanks are going to be brutal.
Yeah.
Because especially with Achilles running low on big values, you're not going to be able to punish them as easily.
Mhm.
Right, there's
You're
only
going
one
to be
6
taking
left.
a lot back. Like you're drawing a card and taking 2 after combat. So, yeah. And now
Wow,
with this
look at
positioning,
this.
the only way to spear throw the archer is the boost below Yanenga and then spear throw it.
That's rough.
Also on the only space with 2 spots.
Yeah, that's also true.
So Jaws. Great positioning from Kjet.
I forgot about Wily's, though. We saw Ninja flip over a Wily. I mean, Wily is quite a good attack. It's an honorary
Yep.
6, right?
Exactly.
So
Yes.
that could be pretty important still.
And with no more after combat movement from Yen, it is basically going to be a 6.
Now I missed it. There was the battle hardened, correct? What did that get back? Did it loop itself, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the second battle hardened just looped itself. Well, it looped the other copy.
Yeah.
Most players just take back the one they played just because it's just nice and shorthand.
Mm-hmm.
All right, attacking the archer. Doubt the archer blocks here. If you had pin the prey, we would definitely see it here, but both have been used already. And we see the battle hardened get itself back once again.
Yen here at 7 cards left in deck. Achilles down to 2. It's coming down to the wire. It's now or never for Achilles. Got to start making moves, but I think Yen just has enough defenses to be able to be okay.
I agree. And the problem when you get down to this point, it's like you start counting defenses, right? He's got 6 cards in hand. Is there any possible combination where you could have no defense? And the answer is yes. Currently, you could have 2 reds, 2 Master of the Hunts, and then 2 Archer cards. Oh no, there's only one archer card left. So no, Yen is guaranteed to have at least one defense here.
Maybe if you're lucky, it's a point blank and he tosses in a 6, but really, how much is it going to do with how much health she has left?
Yeah.
And that's also your last 6, unless you're tossing a Wily.
I think maybe you're hoping that you can land 6 damage if she only has 1 defense, and you throw your double attack right here, and you land 6, puts Yenenga down to 5, and then you get maybe a spear and 1 more interaction to finish it.
Yeah, we see Spear come out here. Achilles at 7 in hand. Yenenga chilling at 6.
I think you had to go in there though, right?
Yeah.
Like, just take your shot while you can, because now Yen is going to be guaranteed to have 2 defenses after this next maneuver.
Yes, and Yen walks away here. You're forced to boost with Helm. She blocks with whatever you toss into, and then she could either hit you there or continue to go away. See the feint come out.
Oh, jeez.
Oh man, that's crazy. That is an
Wow.
amazing attack there because it forces Achilles to draw. It's the only thing that feint draws against.
Yep. That was massive. I mean, I think the game is looking to be pretty much over even without that, but that is salt in the wound right there.
Yeah, definitely felt like the nail in the
There's a
coffin being able to
master.
bait out that feint.
But Master, just to draw extra cards, I really like this because you're far enough ahead now that you don't need to worry about exhaustion. Like, you taking exhaustion damage, Achilles is going to die before that's relevant.
Yep.
So
Agreed.
yeah, just get extra cards, have more options. Achilles is
Also-
only going to get like 1 or 2 more interactions, and I don't think that's quite enough.
I don't know that Achilles even has enough defense.
Yeah, Yen's probably going to end this with a combo.
He does have the
Yeah.
battle harden, which lets him basically just take 1 from every attack, but yeah. Yep, just block as big as you can. That's going to do 2 damage ultimately to both fighters. Achilles for drawing, for winning, and then 1 to Yenenga for the combat, 1 for the active combat. And yeah, what does Achilles have left here? He's got battle hardened, Wily, test for weakness. Oh wow, yeah, he has no defense left basically.
Yeah.
Oh, he's got 1 skirmish as well, but yeah, he doesn't really want to be blocking with that.
I think he needs to hit with that. Have any sliver of a chance at this point.
Well, also, if Yenenga
Gotta
makes
hope
it up
I
to that
can't
white
miss
spot,
twice.
Achilles has to boost with test for weakness in order to get adjacent or to throw the spear. So Yen can probably make an attack, play the master, maneuver, boost, and it's probably game over.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the nice thing for Achilles is that battle hardened is always gonna do. Well, actually, a point
It could be a
blank
point
here is
blank,
really annoying.
And Achilles takes 4,
Point
and
blank
then
is
it's
T
game over.
guaranteed no matter what.
Yeah.
If you block with, actually, if you block with anything but the skirmish, you take 4. Yeah. Oh, okay. We see the surprise volley, so still gonna take 2 from this. Yenenga takes 1. Could push it on the archer, which she probably will. Yeah.
One more action left for Yen.
Oh,
If
and
you
then
got the
do you put the archer next to Achilles?
I think so, and force the tri-zone.
This is also good here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only way to get around it is boosting with the test, which takes away the mind game there.
And here's the other thing. Not going to the tri-zone means that if Achilles attacks with the 6, its Jaws is going to be a 5, so it does deal 1 damage, and Achilles wins combat and has to draw. So it's actually ultimately better that he takes the 1 instead of full blocking.
At this point, he can't really attack with. He can't really attack with the double because 2 point blanks just kills him outright. Could bank on Yen not having it, but you know that's quite the risk. Though maybe he has to take a risk like that. Just don't see with 8 health and plenty of blocks left how, because Achilles basically has to win on this next interaction, which I don't think he can. I think even if Yen took the attack undefended, I guess if she took the double undefended entirely, then it would just be
Right.
enough to kill her, but that's not happening, obviously. Achilles, I mean, he could spear throw the archer and the maneuver, but that doesn't put him in a good spot. Because then point blank just kills him guaranteed. And the funny thing is if he goes down to health where point blank can kill him on the actual thing, yeah, I think he just has to go for it.
Yep. But then even then, you have to win right now.
Jaws.
Yep.
Because now you can't
That's
regen
the
anymore
thing.
with only 4 movement available
Yeah.
to you.
There's the point blank.
And that'll lock
And yeah,
it
that
up.
actually just does it because
Achilles wins, takes 4 there. Yep. That'll
Yeah.
do it.
I guess technically if you block with the point blank, that always guarantees. Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah.
Let's listen and
suppose-
see on the players
Yeah,
if they have anything to say.
And you want to know what my first 8 cards were, by the way? It was ridiculous. These were my 8 first cards. Like, what am I going to do?
Yeah. And when I became like an angry face, I was stopped decking pet cards and and
Yeah.
this defense. My only defense was this.
Yeah,
And also, I took Battle Harden's way to
too late, yeah.
play it.
So,
Yeah.
so when Pat died and I got the shift into this, you only had 1 card left. I had 3 cards. It was this 3 times. That was why I was thinking so long. Am I wasting this as a 4 value attack now? Or I'm just gonna be safe? But, yeah, I'm
Yeah, I
glad
was
that
afraid
away then.
also of this. That's why I didn't attack. But also, if it wasn't this and like every other defense, I would probably go in and smack you on the next turn. But
Yeah.
shift into this and you had an eviction. So
Okay, which 1 card did you have in your hand after this interaction?
this one. So I would have attacked
Okay.
almost with any other defense.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and also if you're attacking at this point, I can just get Battle Harden.
Yeah.
You,
Yeah.
I think
Exactly.
lost at this point, but okay, GG.
GG.
All right, so there we have it. Kjet is going to move on to the grand finals for the first time in his unmatched career. He's going to make it the farthest he's ever made it. And Ninja put on a heck of a show. I mean, he made it to all the way to the top 4 to the semifinals. So he is definitely proven himself as a great player, one of the top in the community, and put on quite a show with Achilles there. And we did see Achilles fall twice, so he ended up being the weak link. But I think that is kind of the nature of Achilles. He's a really good fighter. He's very high tier in general, has a great matchup spread, and can usually have a chance into most matchups. But just the composition of his deck and the way he works, it's a really cool design in my opinion, but he's very volatile because sometimes those pat discards do not go your way, and sometimes you just can't find the right pat cards when you need them. So really interesting. But you guys have any final thoughts on what we just saw in that game there?
No, I mean, I think going back to the points that we were discussing before when we just saw the lineups, I did think that Kjet's main goal was to beat Achilles twice. I still think that he could have pulled out a Yeninga Luke Cage, but and especially because Yen would have had choice of her advantage, but it's not quite as comfortable in my opinion as the Achilles matchup, because as you see there, Yen is just very difficult to kill, even with Achilles being able to get the pat effects off at will and having those big attacks at the end. Now I do think, to be fair, Yen would have been in a much worse spot if those discards had hit other things, but that's always kind of the nature of Achilles, because to be fair, if it had hit other things, the only thing that really would have been better than what it hit for Ninja is something like the last pat card, if it was just still chilling in hand. But anything else there, if you lose defenses, then Yen's going to be able to turn more aggressive on you. If you lose attacks, then she can be a bit more defensive and make sure that she has the blocks. And as we saw there at the end, Kjet talking about how when he had that opportunity to attack Achilles after the shift into the heel, the 3 cards in his hand were all 3 copies of Jaws because he drew them early. And so really, like, he could have gotten an undefended 4 there, but then the last card for Ninja was the other test for weakness. And so Achilles maneuvers, attacks you with that. Unless you double block and use both of your other Jaws, then, you know, you're taking a undefended half of that double. And then Achilles is drawing at least 1, maybe 2. And you probably would have been in a really bad spot if you lose all your Jaws with 1 on attack and then 2 on defense there into the double. So I think Kjet made the right call. Makes a lot more sense why he didn't go for more pressure there, because Jaws being the only card that he had access to, I definitely think that I would lean towards saving those as well. And it ended up being the right call because he ended up being able to be fine on defenses for the rest of that game from that point forward.
Yeah, it's really funny because when you, like in this situation, he had all those Jaws. It's like a blessing and a curse, right? Because you want to see your key cards, of course, but if you see too many of them all at once and there's no variety, well, it becomes a little less good because you're forced to play them suboptimally a lot of times when it's your only option, right? You want a variety of different cards in hand so that you have options and can play the best card for the situation, not being forced to play your one best card.
Especially like you said, he had the Jaws, the Skirmishes, and the Stallions all early. And the Stallions mostly fine, like those ended up playing out well, but you know, not having them for if you get potentially put into the pit means you have to position a lot more carefully. And then the Skirmishes and the Jaws you want when Achilles is angry, because those are your best value blocks. And so he used a few of the Skirmishes, or he used both Skirmishes early before Pat died. One for an Archer, which ended up being really good, and then one I think for Yenenka herself. So it's not ideal having to use those early, but he was at least able to hold on to the Jaws, which ended up making the difference in the long run.
Yeah, definitely. Jaws is quite a good card. Like many of Yenenga's cards, that's why she's the big one. But those were good games overall. I think there was some hope in the Achilles Muldoon, which is really exciting. And there's definitely a lot of hope in the Achilles Yenenga one. I think too many of the combat interactions went Kjet's way, and Ninja just wasn't able to find that damage after the Pat discards, unfortunately. But as you mentioned, Zach, that one turn could have made all the difference. It could have changed the entire outcome of the game if Kjet would have decided to be a little bit greedy on the aggression there and throw one of those Jaws as an attack, and then get hit with the double, and now all of a sudden you're up against an angry Achilles. You have Achilles has a card in hand. Yenenga is empty-handed and absolutely just relying on top decking against angry Achilles. That is not the position you want to be in. So yeah, one wrong move changes the whole game. So really, really cool to see. And that's why we love Unmatched so much, because it's always intense up until the end. But looks like we do have players ready for some interviews. So we're going to start off. We're going to get NinjaSegun in here for an interview and see what he has to say. So hi there, Ninja, welcome. First of all, I want to say congrats on making the top 4 in Summer of Legends. So this is essentially the World Championship, and you just proved yourself to be one of the top 4 players in the world. So that's got to feel amazing. I mean, it's unfortunate that you're coming off of a loss, but in general, how are you feeling to get up to this point?
Yeah, I mean, it's still great for me. In the top 4, I was I believe top 16 in the previous tournament. So this is big win for me, big win for Russian community. I think for not only Russian but Russian speaking.
Yeah.
I think from our server, I think it was a long path, and we'll have Za playing in the second semifinal, and I hope he will win his. I was just not as good to win this time.
I mean, I think you played great overall, so congrats on making it so far. And I think the games were really close. Like, even though we all know that Muldoon is really good into Achilles, but there was a glimmer of hope there. So it wasn't over until it was over. But how were you feeling after you saw the lineups that you had with Achilles Luke into the Yenenga InGen? Were you feeling like you still had a chance to win that, or were you feeling a little bit defeated based on the lineups?
No, I mean, definitely Kjet had a better draft than me. I picked Achilles because I didn't want to play against him, but I'm not like an Achilles fan, so I'm not liking playing against Achilles, playing as Achilles. It was a tough point for me, and then I decided that Bigfoot is just not that great in this lineup, and I have to self-ban him. So I played Achilles. I think it was a mistake, and I should have stayed with the characters I like and play on the characters I like, not playing on Achilles. But overall, if it's saying about the first game, I think it was very crucial that he discarded Battle Harden and the Spear.
Yes.
It was like two best cards for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then also some another interactions didn't go my way, but it's okay. If we're taking this into account, I think Muldoon Achilles is still very hard matchup. I was not like thinking I can win this, so I was okay heading into the second game, and then I was again discarded the 1-3 attack and then the 4 value attack, so I just can hit basically with nothing, and then I top decked like with my 2 cards from the Angry Face. I top decked this Spear and something on Pet, so I can attack again, and then my only defense is this 4, which gives him an action from the Momentous. So I was basically top decking very weird stuff, and all Battle Hardens came in very late, also wasn't helping. So yeah, I mean, GG, it was definitely a better draft, but I think I had a chance, especially against Inyanga with Luke. So I think it's pretty much good for Luke. About Inyanga Achilles, I think it's pretty even on the Achilles map, of course, but this time it didn't work for me well.
Yeah, unfortunately, I agree with you. I think your Pat discards when Pat died off, both games were really rough. It just, some of the best cards in Achilles' whole deck, both times got hit, and usually you see, you know, one good card and then maybe like a Pat attack or, I don't know, a Hermes or something that's like less impactful, maybe an Achilles heal, but we just saw bombs on both accounts for your discards, and that was just really brutal. So that definitely did not work out in your favor, but you still played it really well up to the end, and you definitely put on a good show. So that was exciting to watch. And then Zach or Angel, do you guys have any particular questions for Ninja here?
Yeah, I wanted to briefly point out that I definitely agree. I think the Pat discards were so massive in both of the games, and I was very curious to hear your thoughts on the Yananga matchup overall into Achilles, if there was like any doubt of how you were going to play it, because in both games it was very apparent that in one game you wanted to keep Pat alive and the other you wanted to take out Pat as soon as possible. Do you think that you maybe should have tried to keep Pat alive longer, or do you think that it was still the right choice to take out Pat immediately?
I mean, I was not taking out Pat immediately. If you've seen, I didn't deal the damage with, I don't know what this card is called, but which makes 3/5 basically deal the damage with, for Pat, because the only reason for that I had very great attacks in my opening hand. My opening hand was basically 2 1-3 attacks and like this 4 value attacks, and if I have the Pat died very soon, and I will discard these attacks, which I did discard, but yeah. I mean, what's the point? But then if this was maybe in the beginning of the game, I was guaranteed to discard this, and then I don't have enough damage just to outpressure Yan. So I was thinking I can maybe throw away a little bit more of pet cards, maybe killing some archers on the way, and then I will still have the damage to kill Yinyanga. And at this point, if I want to kill Pet as fast, I will just play this aggro game. If I top deck good cards fast enough, or I don't, because I don't have damage overall to kill. So I was thinking I will wait for a little bit, maybe gain some trash cards from my deck and try to avoid discarding good attacks. Yeah, that was. And also I was trying to get Battle Harden, but I didn't. So.
Yeah.
I really like your choice to not damage Pat there when you did that, because it makes perfect sense, right? You're trying to minimize your chances of losing the good cards that were stuck in your hand from the beginning. Unfortunately, you ended up losing those anyways, but that's just bad luck. But I think you played it correctly. I think that was a good call on your end.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I think that'll just about wrap us up. But Ninja, again, congrats on making it so far. Is there anything you want to say to anybody out there? Any shout outs or anything before we go?
Yeah, I think I want shout out for all of you guys who are organizing this tournament, for all our players from our server, and if I want to mention some specific nicknames, it would be Mamart. I think the only nickname that I want to share, because a lot of guys here are supporting me, but this guy, he was with me from the beginning, from my first tournament, and actually he was the one who brought me into this community, and I'm very happy about it. So yeah, shout out Mamart and all the other guys.
That's
I'm sure
awesome to
Mamar's real
hear.
proud, making top 4.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very cool. It always is very important to have kind of a friend or a mentor, you know, in this game, a practice partner, because then you can both just help each other get better and elevate to the top of the competition together. So that is really cool to hear. It's very important to have somebody like that on your side. So yeah, thanks again, Ninja, for participating and dealing with all the stream and everything. Sorry about some of the technical difficulties, but you put on a heck of a show for everybody. So thank you for participating, and congrats on making it so far. And I hope we'll see you again in the future.
Yeah, thank you.
No
I
problem.
hope so.
All
Bye.
right, take care. All right, and we have Kjet. Welcome, Kjet. Congrats on your big win. You finally made it the farthest you've ever made in an official online tourney, making it to the grand finals. How are you feeling after that big win?
Thank you, man. I'm feeling great. And like you said before, I made the top 4, so I was already happy that I matched that again. Was a bit nervous today, but felt confident, especially after the draft. After the draft, it was like, okay, if everything goes normally, it should be fine. And it worked out like that, so I'm really happy.
Yeah, awesome, man. That's great to hear. How you mentioned, I mean, you're feeling good after the draft, right? You had Muldoon, which you are like kind of infamous, maybe I should say, for Muldoon after Cobble and Frogs and whatnot. But we've seen you pull out the Muldoon many times in tourney and have big success. And to line it up into a lineup like Achilles and Luke, I mean, that was really good, because we figured, you know, even if Ninja leads with Luke and gets a win over InGen goes into Achilles and gets a guaranteed win, basically, and it comes down to Achilles into Yananga. So were you feeling confident about that matchup in particular from the beginning?
In the Muldoon Achilles, or the
Yananga.
Yananga.
Yananga Achilles.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, of course, I'm leader, and I win the first one with Muldoon, so then anyways he will have map, and that definitely makes it more even for Achilles.
We have a visitor.
Yeah. So that definitely makes it more even for Achilles. So I knew it would come down to the wire. I was taunted in the beginning. I think it seemed fine, but it felt a bit terrible for me. I don't know if you guys caught us discussing.
Yep.
But my first 8 cards were both skirmishes, all 3 stallions and all 3 jaws. Which, I mean, it's great cards to have, but I really, rather have them on defense and don't really attack with them. But I mean, what am I gonna do? Double maneuver and discard them, so.
Right, no.
I gotta say, with that hand in mind, you played pretty masterfully with them. I mean, the stallion baits were so massive. The turn where stallion went into Brothers in Arms was like a very big interaction.
Yeah, so that one stallion I kept for a bit longer, and I used it to kill Pat. I was considering if now was the time, because the biggest part of my hand was still the 3 jaws. But it was like, well, what can go wrong? Let's just gamble here. And I mean, I was also getting halfway in my deck, so you should be getting better cards to actually use on attack, which I also got. I think it drew the shift after. So I was glad with that interaction specifically. Denying him the action, making him discard 2 cards, and it were great cards to discard as well. So
yeah, that was huge. That was a big
definitely
turning point.
That definitely went my way. Yeah.
Yeah, that was such a cool interaction. It's such a niche interaction. We weren't sure if you were going to see it or not. Like, oh, I'm going to cancel the action game because Pat's going to die off first. but you did, and that was just professionally done. That was awesome.
Yeah, I had that happen before in a practice game once, so I knew of the existence of this interaction. So, especially when Pet had 3 health, I at one point I wanted to defend with Stallion, because if he plays the Battle Frenzy, then I can pull the trigger, and yeah, that's how it pinned out. So went great.
Yeah, it worked out really well. I think a lot of the interactions went in your favor. So that's just part of the game, you know. It's a game of skill, but also luck. When you're at the top of, you know, the competitive unmatched community like you are, and like all of you guys pretty much in this top 4 are, it's like you got to take any little advantage you can get. And when you're evenly skilled or close to it, I mean, luck plays a big factor in these games. So luck was on your side today, which was great, but you still played masterfully all throughout, and you put on a pretty dominating performance. So very cool to see you moving on to the grand finals.
I'm also really happy. So I need to get some practice in for the best of 5, but looking forward to meeting Idalzar or Tariq tomorrow.
Yeah, that's right. So we're going to see your opponent a little bit later on today. But do you have any strategy going into the best of 5? Have you thought about it at all yet, or just that's been on the back burner until it actually matters?
Yeah. So my point of view until this point is I just take every match as it is, and I'll just see every match. I'm not thinking further ahead. So I had 0 considerations yet for the best of 5. But I got about a day to think about it, so we'll be fine for tomorrow.
Yeah, definitely got to get some practice drafts in before then.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right, well, how about Zach or Angel, anything else for Kjet here? Questions or comments?
I think just one thing I want to call out is I always really enjoy seeing you play InGen, because I think you really have the positioning down, and as someone who doesn't pull them out like as often, but definitely has it as kind of a backup or pocket pick, I always love to see really good InGen play. Now, it is not always amazing like to watch for the Achilles InGen one, and I actually ran into that myself not too long ago from the Achilles side, but I do think that there were definitely spots that you got put in that made you make tough choices, and I think it was really down to positioning both traps and workers at multiple times to give yourself the best chance of shutting down Achilles like you were able to, especially on a map like Point Pleasant that has a lot of connections. It can be a bit harder to do that, but you were finding all the little areas where you could force Achilles to basically have to have the biggest boost possible, and sometimes he had him, sometimes he didn't, but it was really fun seeing that, so always love seeing your InGen play.
Thank you. And I mean, yeah, this matchup isn't the most fun one, but I think NinjaSegun did a good job. And he especially caught me off guard with the turn where he popped 4 traps.
Yeah.
That was a bit unexpected.
Yeah, that was wild.
Yeah, it was wild. I can see that play, so that definitely caught me off guard, but it worked out fine in the end.
Yep, that was definitely, it was probably the most exciting matchup of that matchup in particular that I've ever seen, so that was cool to see. But yeah, I mean, just masterfully played. I'm going to echo what Zach said about your positioning. It was really, really good. I mean, in both games, you've shown that you're a master of positioning, and that's part of the reason why you're at the top of the competition. So just keep up that, and I'm sure, you'll do great things tomorrow in the grand finals. So I can't wait to see it.
I'll do my best. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
So, Angela, anything else?
Yeah, I'd like to point out 2 things. First of all, I believe this is officially the 100th game of Yanenga in this Summer Legends.
Wow.
We were currently in UM League. It is 99 games played. And I wanted to ask you for your general opinion about Yanenga and Muldoon, Kjet, considering that you are the 39th win with her out of 100 plays.
Well, I mean, a lot of people are thinking that Yanenga basically sucks, and I think I've made some jokes about it as well, but Yanenga is still definitely one of the top tiers. I don't know what happened now. John decided to not play this tournament. Suddenly, Yanenga's below 50%. I mean, that's not even John. If he would play, there were a few more wins. So I don't know how this community massively decided, okay, Yanenga's bad.
I think we just wanted to send a message to John.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
we need. No, but I think today I showed that it's still fine. You just need to understand your tempo and need to understand positioning. There are a bit more fighters that do well into her, so you need to be careful. You can't just blindly go in all the time anymore, I think. But she's definitely still one of the top tiers.
Awesome.
And then InGen, you asked about. I mean, he's not one of the top tiers. You pick him late as if your opponent's lineup makes sense, and that was the case today. So, yeah.
All right. Anything else, Angel, or was that it?
No, you answered everything I needed.
Excellent. All right. Well, Kjet, anything else you want to say? Any shout-outs or anything you want to say to the stream before we end here?
No specific shout-outs, just I mean my people from EU that practice with me and also some draft practice, but also the army of Jets that is in the Discord nowadays. and I need to shout out to my old account. Keep growing. We are becoming a community.
We are Kid.
We are Jets.
It was actually funny when I was looking up the player stats. It was hard to find NinjaSegun because I was like, wait, he's not appearing in UM League. And then I was like, hold on a second. NinjaSegun. And then he showed up.
Yeah, so when I had to check my opponent indeed in UM League, I had to type in my own name because it's NinjaSegun now.
It's so funny. It's like a plague that is just spreading, taking over.
Yeah. But there's even people that I never spoke with before. They also have Kjet in their name now. That's so
the
funny
Gator
to me.
good.
Yeah.
Oh, geez. Look, it's even spreading to us commentators. We better end this call before it's too late. The final transformation might happen tomorrow if you end up winning Grands. I don't know what's going to happen. So I don't know.
Maybe I
little...
become Reginald tomorrow then.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Reginald's going to come out. I'm a little scared, but we'll see. Either way, it's an exciting time. So, Kjet, congrats again on your big win. Get some rest, get some practice drafts in, and I'm excited to see you tomorrow, and best of luck in Grands.
Will do. Thank you.
No problem. All right, guys, that's going to do it for the first of 2 semifinals for Summer of Legends 2024. So don't go too far. We are going to take a bit of a break, but in just under 2 hours, it should be, we are going to be starting up the second semifinal between Tarek and Za. And 2 great players themselves, and we're going to see who is going to move on to face Kjet in grand finals here. So I can't wait to see that. So don't go too far. Like I said, it's going to be back on this channel in just under 2 hours. But before we sign off for a bit here, I just want to thank you guys, Angel and Zach, for being on commentary with me. This is always a ton of fun, and I couldn't do this on my own, you know, so it's great to have an excellent cast of commentators at my back. So thanks again for joining in, and I hope you had fun. And Angel, I'll toss it to you if you want to say anything to the stream before we sign off.
Yeah, just overall, I really love involving myself in this community, and I've been really loving just doing anything that I can. But I think I told you this last night, commentating is seriously one of my favorite things to do out of all the things in the community, because you just get to sit back with a bunch of friends, really break down some very technical stuff about the game, and just have a good time with one another, see some awesome games from awesome players. So yeah, I definitely agree, and we couldn't have done this without you either, and we couldn't have done this without Alan either. I think that always needs to be said in all of these streams. He carries this entire thing on his back, and most people don't even know who he is.
Yeah. Big shout outs to 645 Development. Alan's the man behind the scenes here running all the streams, so yeah, he definitely makes this all possible. So how about you, Zach? Anything you want to say to the viewers before we sign off?
Not too much. I'm just excited to see how the remaining semifinal goes, as well as Grands tomorrow. Of course, always love that best of 5, giving an extra layer to both the draft and the games. But yeah, other than that, I know we mentioned it at the start of the stream, but for anyone who hasn't yet, I definitely recommend checking out the Unmatched Adventures Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles campaign that's going on right now. It's got a little over 2 weeks left, and we're already over 30 cards for the Alt-Art pack, something we didn't mention before, but basically the stretch goal is every 25,000 over the initial goal. is going to add an extra card to that pack. And yeah, it's over 30 cards right now. And as someone who really likes foils and alt arts and stuff for this game, it's probably the best value pack that we've ever seen. And that's right now, and there's still more to be added. And as a person who absolutely loves adventures, and loves doing both content and just playing stuff around that mode, I'm very much looking forward to what they're doing here with this second expansion for it. So
yeah, it's
check
going to be
that
very
out.
cool. Definitely check that out. We can get a link in the chat. I believe Angel put one earlier. But
Already got it again.
there you go. He's got your back. So check out TMNT Kickstarter going on right now for Restoration Games. And before we sign off, once again, I'm John, Zero Skater 12. I want to thank you all for watching, because these productions, you know, they're meaningless if nobody watches them. So thanks to all you viewers at home. I hope you're all having a great time watching this peak high level Unmatched. It's always a blast. So I'm happy to host these events. So thank you all for watching. And then big thanks to Restoration Games again for just making this game and just being such an awesome advocate for the community and sponsoring these official tournaments. So once again, yeah, big heart to them. Couldn't do it without them. And also shout outs to the guys at Vorpal Board for giving us this awesome platform to showcase these top level games, because all the art and everything for this game looks so cool. So to be able to have it digitally on here and just show it off to the world, it's really cool. So thanks to the Vorpal guys. Thanks to Frank at UM League for running the site that this whole event is hosted on. And you know, shout outs to all the other TOs who helped me run this event, because I definitely could not do it without them. So Frank, Zach, Gary, Joshua, Noah, all you guys, big shout out to you guys. Thank you for helping put all this together. And I'm sure the community at large appreciates all the hard work put in to make these runs. So big thanks to everybody. And of course, Alan, 645 Development, making this all happen. But that's going to do it for us right now. So everybody at home, remember, we are having Semifinal 2 coming up in just under 2 hours. It'll be 2 p.m. Central Time. That's our time here in the U.S., but whatever time it may be for you, it's just under 2 hours. So don't go too far, and we will have more Unmatched action coming back at you right then. So see you all in just a bit.